Ellis took a seat across from him. He looked at Musk, then spoke in a low, deliberate voice. There's a cabal of powerful individuals who are afraid of what you represent, Elon. Your success in tech, in space, in sustainability. It threatens the old power structures. The fossil fuel industry, defense contractors, people with a stake in keeping things the way they are. You've become a target because you're too disruptive. They can't control you, so they're trying to destroy you. Musk's expression hardened. So this trial, all these charges, it's all part of the plan? Ellis nodded grimly. Exactly. The charges against you are just a diversion. The real game is about keeping you sidelined while they continue to operate unchecked. They know that if you continue pushing forward, you'll win. You'll change the world. And they can't have that. They can't let someone like you succeed in reshaping the future. Musk leaned back in his chair, processing everything Ellis had just revealed. How do we fight back? What can I do to stop this? Ellis looked at Musk with a mixture of admiration and resolve. You have the resources. You have the will. But you need to go on the offensive. You need to make them afraid of you. Expose them for who they are. Use everything at your disposal. Your influence, your network, and your access to power. Musk's mind started to race with possibilities. This wasn't just about surviving the trial anymore. It was about taking control of the narrative and revealing the corruption that had been festering beneath the surface. He had the platform to do it, and he had the resources. But more than that, he had something the cabal didn't, the truth. I'm in, Musk said, his voice firm with conviction. Let's expose them. Let's take this to the top. Ellis gave him a brief, approving nod. Good. But we have to be careful. This isn't just a legal battle, it's a war. And in a war, there are no rules. As the meeting came to a close, Musk felt a surge of adrenaline. For the first time in days, he felt a sense of purpose and direction. The fight was far from over, but now he had a plan. It wasn't just about defending himself in court. It was about exposing the forces that were trying to manipulate everything he stood for. And with the help of George Ellis, Musk was ready to take on the battle that lay ahead. The room buzzed with nervous energy as Elon Musk and George Ellis met in secret once again, this time in a heavily guarded location just outside of Washington, D.C. The walls were lined with advanced security systems, and every door was locked, ensuring no one could overhear their conversation. Musk's determination was palpable, but the weight of the stakes ahead pressed heavily on his mind. The courtroom was eerily silent. The sharp click of the judge's gavel echoed through the room, signaling the start of what could be one of the most defining moments in Elon Musk's life. His eyes scanned the room. An array of reporters, lawyers, and the occasional tech mogul, all waiting for the next big drama. Everyone knew this wasn't just any ordinary case. This was a case that had drawn the eyes of the entire nation. The stakes couldn't be higher. Musk, the visionary billionaire who had put humanity on Mars and revolutionized electric cars, was about to face public humiliation, but he had no idea just how deep the trap went. In front of him, Judge Elizabeth Hargrave sat with an unwavering gaze, a woman known for her no-nonsense approach in the courtroom. She wasn't someone who took kindly to those who thought they were above the law, especially not someone like Musk. Today, the world would see if the infamous billionaire could finally be brought down to earth, or if he would once again prove that no one could hold him back. The tension was palpable, and Musk's usual air of confidence seemed to have evaporated. Sitting on the witness stand, he had the posture of a man who knew he was in deep trouble but was trying desperately to hold it together. His usually neat hair was slightly ruffled, and his suit, though perfectly tailored, seemed to weigh heavily on his shoulders. Elon Musk, for once, didn't look like the genius billionaire everyone admired. He looked like a man on the brink of losing everything. Mr. Musk, Judge Hargrave's voice sliced through the room like a blade. You've been accused of misleading investors, jeopardizing public safety, and causing irreparable damage to the environment. How do you respond? The courtroom held its breath as Musk's lips parted. He wasn't used to being on the defensive. He was the one who made the rules. He was the one who decided the future. And yet, here he was, sitting in front of a judge, vulnerable, on the edge of losing everything he had fought for. Elon started. his voice faltering for a moment before steadying. "I've always acted with the best interests of humanity at heart. Every decision I've made has been with the intention of advancing technology, pushing the boundaries of what's possible." The judge cut him off. "Intention doesn't change the outcome, Mr. Musk. Your decisions have had real consequences. The court has reviewed the evidence, and it seems that you've been less than forthcoming about certain, let's call them questionable, actions. Do you dispute that?" The words hit him like a punch to the gut. He'd never been in a situation like this before. Not when he was building PayPal, not when he was launching rockets to space, and certainly not when he was turning Tesla into a global force. But now, it felt like the walls were closing in. His legal team, seated behind him, shuffled uncomfortably in their seats. Musk could feel their eyes on him, silently pleading for him to find the right words to turn the tide in his favor. But all he could do was sit there, the weight of the world pressing down on him. Judge Hargrave's eyes narrowed, and she leaned forward slightly, tapping a pen against the wooden desk. "This is your moment, Mr. Musk. How do you intend to redeem yourself?" Elon's heart raced, the rhythm in his chest pounding louder than his thoughts. This wasn't just a courtroom. This was a stage, and the whole world was watching. How could he possibly explain himself? How could he possibly make them understand that every risk he had taken was for the greater good? I won't deny the mistakes that have been made," he finally said, his voice strained but resolute. "But the reality is that innovation isn't perfect. There will always be bumps along the way. But it's those very bumps that push us to make things better. Tesla wouldn't exist if we played it safe. SpaceX wouldn't exist if we played it safe. The future doesn't wait for us to be perfect. It demands that we act." For a brief moment, Musk thought he saw a flicker of recognition in the judge's eyes. But it quickly vanished as Judge Hargrave shifted in her seat, her expression unreadable. "Well, Mr. Musk," she said, her voice cool but piercing, "if only your words were enough to change what's been done." Elon's jaw clenched. He knew this wasn't going to be easy, but he didn't expect it to be this brutal. Judge Hargrave wasn't just questioning his actions. She was questioning his entire legacy. "Your Honor, if I may," one of Musk's lawyers, a woman named Amanda Cole, interjected, trying to steer the conversation back on track. "We believe the evidence presented does not accurately reflect Mr. Musk's intent or the full scope of his work. We request that." Before she could finish her sentence, Judge Hargrave slammed her gavel down again, silencing the room. "Mr. Musk," she began, her tone colder now, "you may have the world's attention, but that doesn't give you a free pass. The court has ruled. The damage is done, and no amount of eloquence can change that." Elon felt the blood drain from his face. There it was. The verdict. It was official. He was being publicly humiliated, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. His reputation, his company, his legacy, everything he had worked so hard to build, was on the verge of crumbling. The media cameras flashed, capturing every moment of his defeat. He could feel the weight of their lenses on him, scrutinizing his every move, every expression. His social media feed was probably already blowing up with headlines mocking his fall from grace. The billionaire genius who couldn't keep his promises. The man who couldn't save his own empire. But just as the room seemed to be closing in on him, something unexpected happened. There was a brief pause in the chaos, a moment of stillness. And then, Elon Musk reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, unassuming badge. It was a badge that nobody had expected, certainly not the judge, not the lawyers, not the audience. The badge was simple, black with gold trim, featuring the iconic eagle of the U.S. Secret Service. Elon's thumb brushed across it before he held it up for everyone to see. The entire courtroom froze. "Your Honor," Musk said, his voice now steady and calm, "I believe this will change the course of this trial." Everyone in the room fell silent as they processed what had just happened. The implications were immediate, and they were about to send shockwaves through the entire nation. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The tension in the room reached a boiling point. What had Musk just done? Elon Musk sat quietly, feeling the weight of the U.S. Secret Service badge in his hand. The room was silent, almost too silent, as if the very air was waiting for the next move. The courtroom, once filled with murmurs and anxious anticipation, was now frozen in place. It was as if time had momentarily paused, each person caught in the uncertainty of what Musk had just revealed. A badge. A simple object, but with so much power behind it. Judge Hargrave, who had been poised to deliver the next blow to Musk's reputation, stared at him, her expression unreadable. The room was still, the only sound the subtle ticking of the clock on the wall. It was clear. Elon Musk had just taken control of the situation. For a moment, he let the silence linger. His heart was racing, but he didn't show it. He couldn't afford to let his guard down. If he was going to get out of this, he had to play this carefully. There was no turning back now. Finally, it was the prosecutor, Henry Claymore, who broke the silence. His voice was sharp, laced with disbelief. "What is the meaning of this, Mr. Musk?" Musk didn't flinch. He had anticipated this moment, and he was ready. "This," he said slowly, his voice calm and unwavering, "is the U.S. Secret Service badge. It's not just a symbol of power, it's a symbol of responsibility. And I believe that this courtroom, the case at hand, and the integrity of this country are now under my protection." A murmur rippled through the room. Some people exchanged confused glances, others whispered amongst themselves, but all eyes were fixed on Musk. The badge he held had a weight far beyond its physical form. The U.S. Secret Service wasn't just an ordinary government agency. It was one that handled matters of national security, safeguarding not only the president, but also the country's highest-level officials. The implications of Musk having access to such a badge were staggering. How could someone like him, a businessman, an entrepreneur, have ties to such an exclusive force? Judge Hargrave, still visibly taken aback, took a moment before responding, her voice tinged with suspicion. "You expect us to believe that you have the authority of the Secret Service behind you, Mr. Musk? You're not above the law." Musk's jaw tightened. He didn't back down. "I'm not above the law, Your Honor, but I am committed to protecting the law. And right now, the law is being bent and twisted in ways that threaten the very foundation of this case." He paused for a moment to let his words sink in. "You see, I didn't come here to fight just for myself. I came here to protect something much larger. The truth." The courtroom buzzed with low murmurs, but Musk held his ground. The truth. It was the one thing he had always believed in, whether it was launching rockets to Mars or building sustainable energy solutions. Musk had always been a man driven by the idea that the truth would, eventually, come to light. And today, he was ready to bring that truth into the light, no matter what it took. For a moment, he thought back to how he got here. Elon Musk wasn't born into privilege, despite the wealth he had amassed over the years. He was born in Pretoria, South Africa, to a mother who was a dietitian and a father who was an electromechanical engineer. From a young age, Musk had always been fascinated by technology. He was the kid who tore apart his toys just to understand how they worked. His obsession with the idea of a better future had always set him apart from the other children. But it was more than that. Musk was an idealist at heart. He believed in the impossible, the unreachable. He believed in pushing the limits of what people thought could be done. At 12, he taught himself computer programming and sold his first software, something he called a blaster game, just to make enough money to buy a second-hand computer. By the time he reached college, his interest in the future of humanity had only deepened. He had a vision, a dream, to change the world. He moved to Canada, then to the United States, enrolling at the University of Pennsylvania. From there, Musk's life quickly became a whirlwind of ambition, intelligence, and relentless drive. He dropped out of a PhD program at Stanford to launch his first company, Zip2, which eventually sold for nearly $300 million. The success didn't stop there. It was only the beginning. Musk's ventures into PayPal, Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and the Boring Company weren't just about creating successful businesses. They were about changing the course of humanity itself. He wasn't in it for the money or the fame. He was in it to ensure that humanity had a future on Earth and beyond. To him, it wasn't about building electric cars. It was about reducing humanity's reliance on fossil fuels. It wasn't about launching rockets. It was about ensuring that mankind could become a multi-planetary species. But with great ambition comes great opposition. Musk had always been a controversial figure. He often found himself at odds with politicians, environmental groups, and the media. His unconventional methods, brash demeanor, and outspoken nature made him a lightning rod for criticism. But it didn't matter. He had a vision, and nothing was going to stop him. Back in the courtroom, the moment was tense. The U.S. Secret Service badge had shifted the power dynamics completely, but Musk wasn't done yet. The judge raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical, but her tone softened ever so slightly. "And what do you want from this court, Mr. Musk?" Musk took a deep breath, straightening up. "What I want is simple, Your Honor. I want this court to understand the truth. I want the public to see the bigger picture. The accusations against me are only a small part of a much larger issue, one that reaches into the highest echelons of power." The words hung in the air. The truth. It was something Musk had spent his entire life chasing. But now, as he stood in this courtroom, he knew that the truth would come at a price. He had no idea how far the conspiracy ran, how deep the corruption went, or who could be trusted. But one thing was certain. This was no longer just a trial about his business ventures. This was a battle for the future of humanity itself. Musk stood tall, unwavering. "I'm not just here to defend my name. I'm here to defend the truth. And I won't let anyone silence me. Not now, not ever." The courtroom was now on edge, each person waiting to see where this strange turn of events would lead. It was clear that Elon Musk wasn't just playing a game. He was playing for something far bigger than anyone had realized. The question now was, would the truth be enough to free him, or was he already too deep in the web of deceit? The courtroom had become a battleground, not just for Elon Musk, but for a narrative that no one had anticipated. Musk's shocking reveal of the U.S. Secret Service badge had sent waves through the room, shaking the confidence of the prosecution and the judge alike. What had started as a straightforward trial about Musk's business practices was now something much larger. The implications of the badge weren't immediately clear, but one thing was certain. This case was no longer just about him. It was about the truth that was about to unfold. As the gavel fell once again, signaling a brief recess, Musk took a deep breath and glanced over at his legal team. They were whispering urgently among themselves, but Musk could see the doubt in their eyes. He had made a bold move, but now, the question was it enough? Amanda Cole, his lead lawyer, approached him with a furrowed brow. "Elon, we've got to be careful. This is bigger than we thought. You can't just pull out a badge like that without expecting consequences." "I know," Musk said quietly, his gaze still fixed on the badge in his hand. He could feel the weight of it, both literally and figuratively. "But I don't think I have a choice. This goes deeper than anyone knows." Amanda hesitated, clearly troubled by the turn of events. "You're not wrong. But revealing the badge has only raised more questions. You have no proof that you're connected to the U.S. Secret Service, and they won't take kindly to this." Musk nodded. He knew the risks, but he had also known that the truth he was about to reveal wouldn't come without resistance. The people pulling the strings in the shadows weren't going to let him expose them without a fight. The powerful forces behind this case, the ones who had set this trap for him, weren't going to back down so easily. "We need to dig deeper," Musk said, his voice low but determined. "There's something here, a conspiracy, a cover-up, and they've been trying to bury it. I've been trying to play by the rules, but now I see that the rules are rigged." Amanda looked at him with growing concern. "Do you really think that revealing a badge like this will give you the edge? Or have you just made yourself an even bigger target?" Before Musk could respond, the sound of the gavel struck again, signaling the end of the break. Judge Hargraves stood at the bench, her eyes steely and unmoving. She had recovered from the initial shock of the badge and was now ready to regain control of the proceedings. "Mr. Musk," she began, her voice cold and measured, "I will not tolerate this game you seem to be playing. If you wish to continue with this trial, you will submit to the rules of this court. If you have any legitimate connection to the U.S. Secret Service, you will provide the necessary documentation, and we will proceed accordingly." Musk glanced at his legal team, and they all understood. The time for games was over. The stakes had just been raised higher, and the risk of playing along with the system had never been greater. "I will do what I must, Your Honor," Musk replied, his tone unwavering. "But I will not be intimidated into silence. This is bigger than any one of us." The room was buzzing with anticipation as the court session resumed. Reporters scrambled to get the best shots, their cameras flashing, while legal experts were already typing furiously on their laptops, analyzing every word Musk had said. The world was watching, but Musk knew that the real battle was just beginning. As the trial unfolded, it became increasingly clear that the case against Musk wasn't just about the charges of investor misrepresentation or environmental damage. There was something far darker lurking beneath the surface. As Musk's defense team prepared their next steps, they began to uncover hints of a much larger conspiracy, one that extended far beyond the courtroom walls. It didn't take long for Musk to realize that the accusations against him were only part of a greater plot. The charges, many of which seemed exaggerated or even fabricated, appeared to be the result of a coordinated effort by powerful figures who had been working behind the scenes to undermine him. These weren't just business rivals. They were people with far-reaching influence, and they would stop at nothing to take him down. But Musk, ever the strategist, wasn't about to back down. He had always known that the road to success was fraught with obstacles, but he never imagined he'd face such an intricate web of manipulation. The media had been complicit in the narrative against him, spinning stories that painted him as a reckless billionaire with no regard for the greater good. And now, the court was playing its part in the game, trying to strip him of his dignity and reputation. The deeper he dug, the more disturbing the connections became. Musk's team discovered links between the prosecutors and certain government officials who had personal stakes in Musk's downfall. There were rumors of financial backers with hidden agendas, people who stood to lose millions if Musk's companies continued to thrive. The more they investigated, the clearer it became. They weren't just after him. They were after everything he had worked to build. The media, once obsessed with Musk's success, had now turned against him. Headlines screamed accusations of fraud, deceit, and environmental destruction. Musk was painted as a villain in the eyes of the public, a man whose ambition had finally caught up with him. The whispers grew louder. Was he truly a hero, or had his ambition blinded him to the consequences of his actions? But Musk wasn't alone. He had built a network of allies over the years, loyal employees, friends, and even unexpected supporters from the world of politics, tech, and beyond. As the trial continued, they began to rally around him, offering help, resources, and even inside information. They believed in his vision, and they weren't about to let a group of corrupt officials tear it all down. One night, Musk sat in his office, staring at the screen in front of him. The documents piled up, and his mind raced with questions. Who could he trust? How deep did this go? He knew the truth was out there. He just had to find it. But the longer the trial dragged on, the more he realized that this battle wasn't just about clearing his name. It was about exposing the dark forces at work, the ones who had been pulling the strings from behind the scenes. "I can't do this alone," Musk muttered under his breath, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. "I need to find the people who can help me bring the truth to light." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Elon Musk's mind raced, but there was a new sense of clarity. He wasn't just going to defend himself. He was going to take the fight to those who sought to destroy him. The journey ahead would be dangerous, full of unknowns, but one thing was for sure: Musk wasn't backing down. The days following the courtroom's tension seemed to blur together for Elon Musk. His thoughts were consumed by the trial, the conspiracies swirling around him, and the realization that he wasn't just fighting for his freedom. He was fighting for the future. His legal team had already started to prepare the next phase of defense, but Musk knew he needed more than just lawyers in this fight. The forces arrayed against him were powerful, and he had to find allies who could help him see through the fog of deception that had settled over everything. It wasn't long before he received an unexpected phone call, one that would change the direction of his battle. "Mr. Musk, it's George Ellis," the voice on the other end said. "I think we need to talk." Musk paused. George Ellis? The name was familiar. Ellis was a former high-ranking intelligence officer with ties to the U.S. government, someone Musk had met only in passing at a tech conference years ago. They had shared a mutual respect for one another, but their paths had never really crossed professionally. "George," Musk said, leaning back in his chair, "to what do I owe the pleasure?" "I've been following the trial, Elon," Ellis replied, his voice calm but serious. "And I think I can help. There's more to this case than you realize. I've been watching it from the outside, and I believe we're looking at something far bigger than corporate sabotage." Musk's interest peaked. "What do you mean?" Ellis took a seat across from him. He looked at Musk, then spoke in a low, deliberate voice. "There's a cabal of powerful individuals who are afraid of what you represent, Elon. Your success in tech, in space, in sustainability. It threatens the old power structures. The fossil fuel industry, defense contractors, people with a stake in keeping things the way they are. You've become a target because you're too disruptive. They can't control you, so they're trying to destroy you." Musk's expression hardened. "So this trial, all these charges, it's all part of the plan?" Ellis nodded grimly. "Exactly. The charges against you are just a diversion. The real game is about keeping you sidelined while they continue to operate unchecked. They know that if you continue pushing forward, you'll win. You'll change the world. And they can't have that. They can't let someone like you succeed in reshaping the future." Musk leaned back in his chair, processing everything Ellis had just revealed. "How do we fight back? What can I do to stop this?" Ellis looked at Musk with a mixture of admiration and resolve. "You have the resources. You have the will. But you need to go on the offensive. You need to make them afraid of you. Expose them for who they are. Use everything at your disposal. Your influence, your network, and your access to power." Musk's mind started to race with possibilities. This wasn't just about surviving the trial anymore. It was about taking control of the narrative and revealing the corruption that had been festering beneath the surface. He had the platform to do it, and he had the resources. But more than that, he had something the cabal didn't: the truth. "I'm in," Musk said, his voice firm with conviction. "Let's expose them. Let's take this to the top." Ellis gave him a brief, approving nod. "Good. But we have to be careful. This isn't just a legal battle, it's a war. And in a war, there are no rules." As the meeting came to a close, Musk felt a surge of adrenaline. For the first time in days, he felt a sense of purpose and direction. The fight was far from over, but now he had a plan. It wasn't just about defending himself in court. It was about exposing the forces that were trying to manipulate everything he stood for. And with the help of George Ellis, Musk was ready to take on the battle that lay ahead. The room buzzed with nervous energy as Elon Musk and George Ellis met in secret once again, this time in a heavily guarded location just outside of Washington, D.C. The walls were lined with advanced security systems, and every door was locked, ensuring no one could overhear their conversation. Musk's determination was palpable, but the weight of the stakes ahead pressed heavily on his mind. Ellis had made it clear. The forces behind the curtain were vast, powerful, and ruthless. It wasn't just the government officials or business elites who were involved in this conspiracy. There were shadowy figures with ties to international organizations, financial giants, and military contractors. These were the players Musk had never imagined would come after him, but now that he understood the scale of the game, he had no choice but to rise to the occasion. "I've gathered some intel, Elon," Ellis said, breaking the silence as they sat down at a large, circular table. "This is bigger than we thought. It's not just about you anymore. It's about something much deeper, something that could change the world if it's exposed." Musk leaned forward, his gaze intense. "What are we talking about here, George? What's at the heart of this conspiracy?" Ellis hesitated before answering, clearly choosing his words carefully. "It's about control. The people behind this, they're trying to maintain the old order, the status quo. Your work in renewable energy, your ambition to colonize Mars, the innovations in AI, they all threaten the current power structures. They don't just want to stop you. They want to suppress everything you stand for. They want to stifle progress." Musk processed Ellis's words, trying to grasp the enormity of what was being revealed to him. He had always known his companies and projects challenged established industries, but this was different. The idea that powerful individuals were conspiring against him, pulling strings to keep their hold on power, was far more than he'd ever anticipated. "And how do we stop them?" Musk asked, his voice steady, though his mind raced with possibilities. Ellis gave him a small smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. That's where you come in. You're not just some tech billionaire anymore, Elon. You're a symbol. You've become the face of progress and innovation, and that's why they fear you. To defeat them, you have to turn the tables. You have to expose them for what they are. Musk nodded. But how? They control everything. The media, the legal system, the very institutions that are supposed to protect us. How do we get the truth out there? Ellis stood up and walked over to a whiteboard, writing down a series of names and connections. The web was intricate, with lines crisscrossing between high-ranking officials, corporate leaders, and powerful financiers. Musk recognized many of the names, people who had been vocal in their opposition to his work, who had tried to undermine him in the past. But some names were unfamiliar, hidden behind the veils of shadowy organizations and black market dealings. We start by getting the truth out, piece by piece, Ellis said, pointing to a few key individuals on the board. These people are the key players, the ones orchestrating everything from behind the scenes. They're the ones who've made sure this trial is happening. They've manipulated the media, they've pushed false narratives, and they've used their influence to make sure that nothing ever changes. Musk stared at the board, his mind working through the implications. It was overwhelming, but Ellis was right. Exposing these individuals, pulling back the curtain on their operations, could be the only way to not only save himself but to dismantle the system that had been so corrupted by greed and power. So, what's the first step? Musk asked, determined to move forward with action. Ellis turned and met his gaze. We need to gather evidence. Hard, irrefutable evidence. We need to prove that these people are behind the smear campaign against you. And we need to show the world how deep the corruption goes. We'll use every resource at our disposal, including your network and the people you trust. The more people we have on our side, the harder it will be for them to silence us. Musk's mind raced. He thought about his tech company, his connections in the government, and the vast network of allies he had built over the years. He had access to information that could expose these individuals, information that could change the course of the trial and the future of his empire. But he knew this wasn't going to be easy. The people they were going after had immense power, and they wouldn't back down without a fight. Musk had made enemies in high places before, but this was different. These were people who could manipulate the entire system, people who had the ability to destroy lives and careers in an instant. As Ellis laid out their plan in more detail, Musk couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. This was a war they were about to enter, and while the odds were stacked against them, they had one advantage: the truth. If they could expose the corruption at the heart of this conspiracy, it would shake the foundations of everything these powerful figures had built. The next few days were a blur of activity. Musk's legal team worked tirelessly, sifting through mountains of documents and communications, trying to find any clue that could connect the people behind the conspiracy to the false charges he was facing. They dug into financial records, secret meetings, and even personal connections. Anything that could reveal the truth. Meanwhile, Ellis used his intelligence contacts to uncover information that was far too sensitive for ordinary people to access. There were whispers of hidden accounts, backdoor deals, and covert operations that had been used to manipulate the legal system and the media. These were the strings that, when pulled, would unravel the entire web of deceit. But as they dug deeper, the risks grew. The more they uncovered, the more dangerous the situation became. There were whispers of surveillance, of people watching Musk's every move. Ellis had warned him that they were already under scrutiny, but now it was clear that their every step was being monitored. One night, as Musk sat alone in his office, staring at the documents in front of him, a thought crossed his mind. What if they were already too late? What if the people behind this conspiracy had anticipated his every move and were already one step ahead? His phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a message from Ellis. They know we're coming for them. Be careful. This is just the beginning. Musk's heart raced. It was clear now more than ever that the forces working against him weren't going to let up. But he was determined. He wasn't going to let them silence him. He had come this far, and he was ready to go all the way to expose the truth, no matter what the cost. The silence in Musk's private jet was deafening. The hum of the engines was the only sound that broke through the heavy tension that had settled over the room. Elon Musk sat across from George Ellis, both of them deep in thought as they prepared for what was, without a doubt, the most dangerous phase of their plan. Musk had never been one to shy away from risk, but this was different. He wasn't just fighting for his companies or his reputation anymore. He was fighting for the very future he had worked tirelessly to build. The road ahead was filled with uncertainty, but one thing was clear. If they didn't act now, the conspiracy against him would only grow stronger. "Once we make our move," Ellis said quietly, breaking the silence, "there's no turning back. We expose the people behind this. We show the world what's really going on, and we make them feel the consequences." Musk nodded, the weight of the decision settling in. "I know, but we have to be smart about this. One wrong move, and they'll crush us before we even get the chance to fight back." Ellis leaned forward, his eyes focused. "You're right, but we're not going to be alone in this. We have allies in key positions, and we have to leverage everything we've got. This isn't just about taking down a few bad actors. This is about a full-scale exposure. We're going after their entire network, destroying their grip on the system." Musk's thoughts raced. Every step of this plan had to be executed perfectly, with no room for error. The moment they went public with their findings, they would be labeled as enemies of the state, conspirators, even traitors. There would be no coming back from that. But the alternative, letting these people continue to operate unchecked, was worse. They would never allow him to succeed in his mission if they remained in power. "We're not just fighting for me anymore, are we?" Musk said, almost to himself. "We're fighting for everyone who believes in progress. Everyone who wants a future that's better than the one these people are trying to preserve." Ellis's voice was low, but filled with conviction. "Exactly. You've become a symbol for change, Elon. A symbol of what's possible when we push the boundaries of what's possible. They can't let that stand. They'll do whatever it takes to make sure you fail. But if we can expose them, if we can show the world what they're really up to, then maybe, just maybe, we'll have a shot at turning the tide." Musk leaned back in his seat, his mind working through the implications. There was no going back now. They had to take the fight to the very people who had been manipulating the system from the shadows. But how? By the time Musk arrived at the safe house late that evening, the plan had already begun to take shape. He was joined by a select group of trusted individuals, his closest advisors, some of his legal team, and of course, George Ellis. They gathered around a large table, the dim light of a single bulb casting long shadows across their faces. Ellis began to speak, his voice calm but filled with urgency. "Here's the strategy. We start by releasing a set of documents to the press. They'll show the financial ties between the people behind this trial and various defense contractors, tech monopolies, and energy firms. These are the companies and individuals who stand to lose the most if Musk's projects succeed." Musk stared at the table in front of him, the gravity of the situation weighing on his shoulders. These documents, once made public, would bring down some of the most powerful people in the country. It was the first strike in a battle that would likely change everything, forever. "How do we make sure these documents reach the right hands?" Musk asked, his eyes meeting Ellis's. Ellis smiled faintly. "We've got connections in the media, people who have already agreed to help us. We won't just release these documents into the wild. We'll make sure they're presented in a way that's undeniable, that will force everyone to pay attention. This isn't just about getting the truth out. It's about creating a wave, a storm." Musk nodded, feeling the weight of it all. It was a bold move, and the consequences of failure were catastrophic. But he knew that without this first strike, they would remain in the dark, fighting an invisible enemy. This was the only way forward. "The public will never believe this, though," Musk said, his brow furrowed. "These people are powerful. They control the narrative." Ellis met his gaze, his tone unwavering. "That's why we need to hit them from multiple angles. This isn't just about documents. We've been gathering intel on these individuals for weeks. We'll release the financial records, sure, but we'll also have whistleblowers coming forward, people with first-hand knowledge. We'll expose their operations piece by piece. We'll make them afraid that they'll lose control." Musk looked around the room at the people gathered there. He knew they were all in this together, that their fates were tied to this mission. He had trusted many of them for years, but this was something different. This wasn't just about protecting his companies. It was about protecting the future. It was about showing the world the truth, no matter the cost. As the hours passed, the team worked tirelessly, preparing the documents and making final arrangements. Musk couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Once the information went public, the battle would escalate to a whole new level. The following morning, as dawn broke over the horizon, Musk's phone buzzed with a message from Ellis. It's time. Musk took a deep breath and hit send. The documents were out. The world would soon know the truth. Within minutes, the news started to spread. Major outlets began reporting on the leaked documents, detailing the hidden financial interests of the people behind the trial. The documents linked powerful defense contractors, energy companies, and tech moguls directly to the orchestrated attack on Musk's reputation. It was undeniable. The connections were clear, and the public was beginning to ask questions. Musk watched the news unfold on his phone, feeling the weight of every word. He knew there was no turning back now. The storm had started. The ripple effect was immediate. As expected, the backlash was swift. Critics, pundits, and politicians began to rally around the powerful figures named in the documents, trying to discredit the revelations. But it was too late. The seed had been planted, and the public's curiosity was piqued. The following days were filled with chaos. The revelation of the documents had ignited a firestorm across the media, and the world's attention was fixated on Elon Musk. Headlines screamed about corruption at the highest levels, detailing connections between political elites, massive corporations, and dark money funding the trial against him. The public outcry was intense, with social media flooded with hashtags like #Musk versus the system and #corruption exposed. But while Musk had succeeded in shaking the foundation of the opposition, it quickly became apparent that they were not going to take this lying down. The first sign that things were escalating came in the form of a phone call from George Ellis. Musk answered the call, his pulse quickening as Ellis's voice came through the line. "They're coming after us, Elon," Ellis said, his tone urgent. "I don't know how, but I'm hearing whispers that they've already mobilized their own forces. They're not going to let this slide. They'll try to bury this with everything they've got." Musk's stomach tightened. He had known it wouldn't be easy, but he hadn't anticipated this level of retaliation so soon. What are they planning? How do we counter this? Ellis hesitated for a moment, as if weighing his words carefully. They've already started discrediting the evidence. Some of their allies in the media are claiming the documents are fabricated or taken out of context. They're spreading misinformation and trying to paint you as the villain. They're going to use every tactic at their disposal to spin this into a scandal about you, not about them. Musk let out a frustrated sigh, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The battle was far from over. It had only just begun, and the opposition was already preparing their counterattack. But Musk wasn't one to back down. If they thought this was going to be easy, they had underestimated him. "We're not going to let them control the narrative," Musk said firmly, his resolve hardening. "What do we need to do next?" Ellis was quiet for a moment before responding. "We need to hit them where it hurts. We can't just sit back and let them spin this. We need to go on the offensive. We need to expose their lies, their tactics, and their connections. We need to show the world that they're not the ones who have the power here. They are. And we can do it by taking down their biggest supporters." The following morning, Musk and Ellis convened with their inner circle in a secure location, a rented building in a quiet area away from prying eyes. The stakes were higher now, and the clock was ticking. Every move they made had to be calculated. "We need to gather more evidence. We need to prove that the people behind the smear campaign have done this before," Ellis said, addressing the group. "There are other cases, corporate espionage, political manipulation, even human rights abuses. If we can tie them to other criminal activities, we'll expose a pattern of corruption. That'll be harder for the media to ignore." Musk nodded. He had already instructed his team to comb through every possible angle, digging into the backgrounds of the individuals who had been named in the leaked documents. They had to go beyond the surface-level connections and uncover more damning evidence. This wasn't just about saving Musk's reputation. It was about taking down a network of corruption that had been pulling the strings for far too long. They spent hours poring over financial records, corporate files, and communications, tracing every link in the chain. They uncovered shady deals between defense contractors and politicians, illegal lobbying efforts, and fraudulent business practices. But they needed something bigger, something that would hit their opponents hard enough to force the public to pay attention. Musk's eyes narrowed as he scanned a series of emails between two key players, one a powerful lobbyist, the other a senior government official. The emails detailed a covert operation to undermine Musk's projects, including a plan to plant false information in the media and divert government funding from his initiatives. This was it. This was the smoking gun they needed. "This is it," Musk said, his voice calm but filled with a sense of urgency. "These emails tie them directly to the attack on my companies. If we release these, there's no way they can deny their involvement." Ellis gave a grim smile. "This will change everything. Once these get out, they won't have anywhere to hide." But as Musk prepared to release the emails to the media, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The opposition had already proven how far they were willing to go to protect their interests. What if they had anticipated this move? What if they had already prepared a counterstrike? As if on cue, Musk's phone buzzed with an alarming message from his legal team. They had just received a subpoena from the court demanding the immediate release of all communications related to Musk's business dealings, including the sensitive documents they had uncovered. The timing was no coincidence. The opposition was making their move, trying to put pressure on Musk and his team. Musk's first instinct was to call Ellis, but he already knew what he needed to do. They couldn't let the opposition gain the upper hand. They had to keep pushing forward, even if it meant breaking the rules. "We can't comply with this subpoena," Musk said, standing up from the table, his voice filled with determination. "If we hand over everything, they'll be able to cover their tracks. We can't let them get away with this. We'll release the emails, and we'll take the fight straight to them." Ellis was already on the phone, contacting trusted allies who could help get the information into the right hands. There was no more time for hesitation. If they were going to win this battle, they had to act fast and decisively. The emails were released to the press within hours. As the details of the covert operation became public, the backlash was immediate and intense. News outlets from across the globe picked up the story, and the implications were clear. The people behind the conspiracy were not just manipulating the legal system. They were actively working to sabotage innovation, suppress new technologies, and protect the old power structures. But the counterattack was swift. The opposition's allies in the media and government swung into action, attempting to discredit the leaked emails and paint Musk as the villain. They accused him of manipulating the evidence, fabricating the emails, and undermining the integrity of the legal process. They launched a smear campaign, questioning his credibility and trying to shift the focus back onto his personal life and his business practices. Musk knew the stakes had never been higher. His life, his reputation, and his vision for the future were on the line. The public's opinion was shifting, and he couldn't afford to let the opposition control the narrative. This was no longer just a legal battle. It was a war for the future. The media frenzy surrounding Musk's leaked emails had reached a fever pitch. The world was watching, and both supporters and detractors were scrutinizing every detail of the revelations. The emails painted a damning picture of political manipulation, corporate espionage, and financial entanglements that tied powerful figures to the attack on Musk's companies. But despite the overwhelming evidence, the opposition was far from defeated. They had anticipated this move, and they were ready with a counteroffensive that would make Musk's fight for the truth even harder. Musk was sitting in his office late into the night, staring at the endless flow of news reports flashing across the screen. On one side of the room, his legal team was working feverishly to protect his interests, while his communications team was doing their best to manage the public narrative. The room was tense, and Musk could feel the pressure mounting with every passing minute. George Ellis walked into the office, his expression grim. He didn't need to say anything. Musk could tell that the opposition was already tightening their grip. "They've got the media in their pocket, Elon," Ellis said, his voice low. "I'm hearing that some of the biggest news outlets are starting to question the authenticity of the documents. They're pushing the narrative that it's all a fabrication, a smear campaign." Musk clenched his jaw. "I knew they would. But we have the evidence. We have the emails, the records, the witnesses. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's the truth. Why isn't the world seeing that? Ellis nodded, but his face remained serious. The truth doesn't always make the headlines, especially when there's a machine working behind the scenes to control the narrative. These people are powerful, Elon. They've been doing this for years. They've corrupted the media, politicians, even law enforcement. And now they're using those same tools to fight back. Musk leaned back in his chair, trying to process the weight of Ellis's words. He had known the opposition was strong, but he hadn't realized just how deep their influence went. It wasn't just about protecting their own power anymore. It was about maintaining control over everything. The media, the government, the future. "I won't let them silence us," Musk said, his voice cold with determination. "We have to do more than just release documents. We need to turn the tide, create a narrative that can't be ignored." Ellis paused for a moment before speaking. "We've been talking about creating a coalition of whistleblowers, people who've worked with these individuals and seen their corruption firsthand. If we can get their testimonies on record, it'll be harder for anyone to deny what's going on." Musk nodded slowly. "We'll find them. We'll gather the voices that can expose everything." Over the next few days, Musk's team worked tirelessly to track down individuals who had been connected to the conspiracy. They reached out to former employees, journalists with a history of investigating corruption, and anyone who had first-hand knowledge of the shady dealings that had been going on behind closed doors. It wasn't easy. Many of the potential whistleblowers were scared, hesitant to come forward for fear of losing their jobs or becoming targets of retribution. But Musk's reputation as a disruptor and innovator worked in his favor. His team promised anonymity and protection, and slowly but surely, a network of individuals who had witnessed the conspiracy firsthand began to come forward. One of the most significant pieces of the puzzle came from a former employee of one of the largest defense contractors linked to the conspiracy. This whistleblower, who had worked closely with the company's executives, provided Musk's team with internal communications that directly tied the company to illegal lobbying efforts aimed at undermining Musk's ventures. "We have the smoking gun," Ellis said as he reviewed the documents. "These emails not only show that they were trying to sabotage you, they reveal that they've been working with government officials to prevent you from accessing crucial funding. They've been using their influence to block every one of your projects." Musk's eyes widened as he skimmed the documents. These communications didn't just implicate corporate figures, they linked powerful government officials to a coordinated effort to suppress technological advancement in favor of maintaining the status quo. "This is it," Musk said, his voice steely. "We have everything we need. These people are about to be exposed. We'll make sure the world knows exactly what they've been doing." With the whistleblowers' testimonies and the damning new evidence in hand, Musk made the decision to go public. He would address the nation in a televised speech, not just to defend himself, but to reveal the truth. He wasn't just fighting for his reputation anymore. He was fighting for the future of technology and innovation, and he was ready to take the fight to the very people who had tried to destroy him. The speech was scheduled for prime time, and Musk's communications team worked tirelessly to prepare the script, ensuring that every word would have maximum impact. The day of the speech, Musk sat in a chair backstage, staring at the teleprompter and rehearsing his lines. His heart pounded in his chest. This was it, the moment he would either win the battle for the truth or lose everything. He glanced at Ellis, who was standing by his side. "This is bigger than I thought," Musk said quietly. Ellis gave him a reassuring nod. "You've got this, Elon. Just speak from the heart. The truth will resonate." The cameras began to roll, and the lights focused on Musk as he stepped onto the stage. He looked directly into the camera, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Good evening, everyone," Musk began, his voice echoing in the quiet room. "Tonight, I'm here to tell you the truth. The truth about what's really happening behind the scenes, the truth about the forces that are working to prevent progress and innovation from reaching its full potential." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in before continuing. "For months, I've been under attack by powerful forces who want to keep things the way they are. These forces, operating in the shadows, have used their influence to manipulate the legal system, control the media, and suppress new ideas. They've tried to destroy me, my companies, and everything I stand for. But I'm not backing down. I won't let them stop the future." Musk then proceeded to lay out the evidence, unveiling the whistleblower's testimonies and the internal communications that exposed the vast conspiracy. He named names, powerful individuals in both government and industry who had conspired to undermine his efforts. "The truth is clear," Musk said, his voice growing stronger. "These people have been manipulating the system for years. They're not just after me. They're after all of us. They want to maintain control, and they'll do anything to keep things the way they are. But we won't let them. We're fighting for the future. We're fighting for the next generation of technology and innovation." As Musk finished his speech, a surge of emotion swept through him. He knew that there was no turning back now. He had exposed the conspiracy to the world, and there was no way the opposition could ignore it. But he also knew that the battle had just entered a new phase. The world was watching, and the stakes were higher than ever. The aftermath of Musk's public speech sent shockwaves through every corner of the globe. Social media platforms exploded with opinions, analyses, and debates. The powerful forces that had tried to bring Musk down were reeling, but they weren't giving up. They had underestimated his resilience, and now they were scrambling to regain control of the narrative. Musk's inbox was flooded with messages, some of support, some of disbelief, and some from old allies offering their help. Among the messages, one stood out. It was from an anonymous source, but the name at the top of the email gave Musk pause, a friend of the truth. The email was short, cryptic, but it pointed to something big. "There's more you don't know. There are players who are still untouchable. You need to go after the ones that even the law can't touch. I'll give you the tools, but you'll need to act fast. Time is running out." Musk's heart pounded as he read those words. Who was this person? And what more was there to know? The mystery intrigued him, but he knew he didn't have the luxury of waiting. Whoever this friend of the truth was, they had given him a key insight. There were still people behind the scenes who had yet to be fully exposed. "George, we've got another lead," Musk said, dialing Ellis's number. "But this could take us even deeper into dangerous territory." Over the next few days, Musk's team began working furiously to follow up on the email. The anonymous source had hinted at a hidden network of individuals who were shielded from any legal consequences. These were the untouchables, the real power brokers behind the scenes who controlled the levers of influence. If Musk could expose them, it would be the final nail in the coffin for the corrupt system trying to crush him. Ellis's face was grim when they met. "We don't have much time, Elon. They're already fighting back hard. There's word they're starting a smear campaign against you, trying to paint you as a lunatic, someone who's out of control." Musk's expression was determined. "Let them. I've faced worse. If they think I'll back down now, they don't understand who they're dealing with. But I need to find out who these untouchables are. I need names. They won't be able to hide anymore." Ellis nodded. "We've been working our connections, but if we're going after these people, we'll need more than just insider information. We'll need evidence, hard evidence that links them directly to the conspiracy." The team's strategy was clear. They would dig into these untouchables' backgrounds, explore their corporate and political ties, and try to unearth any connections to the secretive organization that had been working against Musk. This would be a high-risk operation, but there was no other option. If Musk was to win, they had to go on the offensive, and it had to be fast. The investigation led them into uncharted territory, an underground network of powerful individuals whose influence extended beyond the public eye. These were people who operated in the shadows, far from the reach of the average person. They used their wealth and influence to control policies, stock markets, and entire industries without ever being directly implicated in any scandal. Musk's legal team, led by Ellis, began working alongside cybersecurity experts and private investigators to track down these figures. It wasn't just about following paper trails. It was about understanding the underworld they were a part of. Musk and his team needed to find their Achilles heel. They started with a name that had surfaced repeatedly in the anonymous tip: Charles Langford. Langford was a billionaire investor with extensive connections to both Wall Street and several influential politicians. He was known for making large donations to political campaigns and lobbying for policies that benefited his business interests. However, despite his vast influence, no one could ever trace anything illegal directly back to him. But Musk's team was relentless. They uncovered a series of financial transactions that were linked to offshore accounts, And it wasn't long before they found evidence that Langford had been using his wealth to fund campaigns that had directly sabotaged Musk's projects. It was a revelation that could bring everything crashing down. But Musk knew they couldn't stop there. They needed to gather more. As they dug deeper, they uncovered more names. High-ranking politicians, corporate CEOs, and legal professionals who had all been involved in the conspiracy. Each name added another layer to the web of deceit that had been spun around Musk. By now, Musk was in too deep to back out. The forces he was up against were not just powerful, they were dangerous. As his team compiled more evidence, it became clear that some of these untouchables would stop at nothing to maintain their power. Musk had already been the target of legal battles and media attacks, but now, it seemed like the stakes were getting even higher. There were whispers of threats, anonymous calls warning Musk to stop digging, to abandon the fight before things got worse. But Musk wasn't afraid. He had faced adversity his whole life, and this battle was no different. If anything, it only fueled his resolve. "We're not backing down," Musk told his team. "We've come too far. We can't let them intimidate us. We expose these people, and we make sure the world sees what they've been doing in the dark." The tension in the room was palpable as they gathered in their makeshift war room. Musk stood at the front, laying out the next phase of their plan. "We're going public with everything we've got. The world needs to know who these untouchables really are, what they've been doing, and how they've been using their influence to control the future of technology." Ellis nodded, his expression serious. "We'll have to be careful. These people won't go down without a fight. But I agree, it's time to take the fight to them." Ellis nodded, his expression serious. "We'll have to be careful. These people won't go down without a fight. But I agree, it's time to take the fight to them." The plan was set in motion. The evidence was going to be leaked to the press, but this time, it wouldn't just be a bombshell. It would be the final, crushing blow that would expose the network of corruption for what it truly was. As the team prepared to release the evidence, Musk felt a sense of urgency building inside him. This was the turning point, the moment where everything could change. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for the future of technology, for progress, for the millions of people whose lives could be improved by the innovations he was trying to bring into the world. The media was already watching, waiting for the next development, but Musk knew that the opposition would be waiting too. They would come after him harder than ever before. And this time, they wouldn't just use the media. They would use their resources, their influence, and their connections to destroy him once and for all. But Musk was ready. The storm had officially broken. The evidence that Musk and his team had uncovered was about to be unleashed on the world, and the media was bracing itself for the fallout. As the night of the release approached, there was a palpable sense of tension in the air. The opposition was already scrambling, knowing that they were about to be exposed on a scale that would shake the very foundations of the corporate and political systems they had spent years building. Musk sat in his office, looking at the data that had been compiled. The documents, emails, and testimonies were all there, proof of the collusion, manipulation, and the coordinated effort to stifle innovation and protect the entrenched power structure. His phone rang, and it was Ellis. "We're set," Ellis said, his voice tense. "The press release is ready. We can hit send at any time. Are you sure about this?" "Once it's out there, there's no turning back." Musk's eyes narrowed as he stared at the screen in front of him, the magnitude of what they were about to do weighing on him. "I've come this far. I've fought too long for the truth to let fear stop me now. Let's release it." At that moment, Musk's team hit send, and the world was forever changed. The press release was a masterstroke. It wasn't just a statement. It was a deep dive into the conspiracy, the players involved, and the evidence that linked them all. Along with the press release, they attached a secure link to a website that housed the entire collection of documents, emails, and audio files that detailed the corruption at the highest levels. Within minutes, news outlets began covering the story. The initial shockwaves were felt globally, and social media erupted in a frenzy. Musk's name was trending worldwide, but so was a long list of names, those untouchables who had thought they were beyond reproach. The documents revealed how they had been working together for years, manipulating markets, suppressing innovation, and using their power to maintain their grip on the global economy. As the world began to digest the enormity of the scandal, Musk sat back in his chair, watching the coverage. It was only a matter of time before the full weight of the truth hit. But he also knew that the opposition wouldn't just sit back and let this happen. They would fight back, and they would fight dirty. As expected, the retaliation came swiftly. Hours after the release, the opposition's PR machine was in full gear. News outlets began running stories questioning the validity of the documents, calling them doctored or fabricated. They spread rumors that Musk had orchestrated a smear campaign, accusing him of being unstable and desperate. Some even went as far as to suggest that Musk was losing his grip on reality. "Don't let them control the narrative," Ellis said as they watched the news unfold. "They'll use every tactic they have. We need to be prepared for anything." Musk didn't flinch. He had expected this. The people he was up against weren't just corrupt, they were ruthless. But Musk had one thing they didn't: the truth. And truth, he believed, was a force more powerful than anything they could throw at him. "We need to double down," Musk said. "We need to force them into a corner. They won't be able to escape the truth once we show it. Let's put out more." Ellis nodded. "We can't just defend the documents anymore. We need to go on offense. Let's get the testimony from the whistleblowers. They're the real key to ending this." Within days, Musk's team managed to secure interviews with several key whistleblowers, former employees and insiders who had first-hand knowledge of the conspiracy. These individuals, who had once been fearful of coming forward, now spoke openly about their experiences. Their testimonies corroborated the evidence Musk had released, providing additional layers of validation. One particularly powerful interview came from a former government official who had once worked closely with the conspiracy's core members. He detailed how the political establishment had been involved in suppressing Musk's technological advancements and how they had used their power to sway regulatory agencies and public opinion. "They told me to block every innovation that came from Tesla or SpaceX," the whistleblower said, his voice trembling with emotion. "They didn't care about the future. They only cared about maintaining their control over the economy. They saw Musk as a threat, and they didn't want him to succeed." The interview was broadcast live, and the reaction was immediate. The public could no longer deny what was happening. The system that had protected these untouchables for so long was crumbling, and now, the truth was undeniable. As the testimonies and additional evidence poured in, the scandal grew. Major news outlets that had initially been skeptical of Musk's claims began to change their tune, slowly turning against the corrupt figures who had once been untouchable. Public outrage mounted as more people became aware of the extent of the conspiracy and the abuse of power that had taken place for years. Corporate executives, politicians, and government officials began scrambling to distance themselves from the exposed figures. Some tried to discredit the evidence, but it was too late. The truth had already taken root in the public's mind. Musk, for his part, remained calm. He had weathered the storm, and now, he was moving on to the next phase of his plan. He had one final weapon, something that could change the entire game. Musk had kept one card up his sleeve, something he knew would tip the scales in his favor once and for all. It wasn't just about exposing the conspiracy anymore. It was about taking action. His legal team had been working behind the scenes to identify the most critical players in the conspiracy. Using the evidence gathered, they were preparing to file a series of lawsuits that would not only dismantle the corporate empires of those involved, but also dismantle the corrupt systems that had protected them. But Musk had something even more potent than a lawsuit. He had connections within law enforcement, ones that could help him push through the legal battles, no matter how powerful the opposition was. He'd been in talks with a contact inside the Secret Service, someone he trusted, and they had offered to support his efforts. Musk wasn't just fighting with legal tools. He was bringing the full force of government agencies to bear against the corrupt individuals who had sought to destroy him. It was time to bring in the heavy artillery. Musk sat in a private meeting room, the flickering of the overhead lights casting long shadows on the walls. The legal battles were in full swing, but he knew that the real game-changer wouldn't come from a courtroom. It would come from the networks he had built over the years, his own powerful connections within law enforcement, particularly the Secret Service. The agent he'd been in touch with, Agent Harper, had promised to help, but Musk knew that calling in favors from law enforcement would only work if they could work quickly and strategically. The system he was up against had deep roots, and it would take more than just legal documents to break through. "Are we ready?" Musk asked, his voice calm but filled with determination. He knew that time was of the essence. With every passing minute, his enemies were closing ranks, trying to destroy the momentum they had built with the release of the evidence. "Everything's set," replied Ellis, his face pale but resolute. "We've got the evidence in place. The whistleblower testimonies are locked and ready. Once we release the next wave of information, it'll be a public storm. But it's not enough to just expose them. We need a way to keep them on the defensive. And that's where Agent Harper comes in." Agent Harper was no stranger to high-stakes operations. In fact, she was known for handling sensitive cases that required the highest level of discretion. A veteran of the Secret Service, she had been involved in protecting national security, investigating financial crimes, and, more recently, dealing with corruption at the highest levels of government and business. When Harper first reached out to Musk, it had been through a secure communication channel. He'd heard rumors of her work, her connections, and her reputation for being a powerful ally to those willing to go beyond the traditional legal avenues. Now, as the storm of media coverage surrounding Musk reached its peak, Harper's team was ready to strike. Musk leaned back in his chair, glancing over to Ellis. "We've pushed the narrative as far as we can, but now, we need them to feel the weight of their own actions." Ellis raised an eyebrow. "And the Secret Service is going to do that?" Musk nodded. "Harper and her team have access to resources that the media can't touch. If we use their influence, we can turn the tide. And more importantly, they can bring down the biggest fish, the ones at the very top of the food chain. They'll be forced to deal with the fallout." The plan was simple but dangerous. Harper had the ability to track and trace the financial transactions that had funded much of the conspiracy Musk was fighting. She also had access to classified information that could expose the covert methods these untouchables used to maintain control over their assets and networks. But they didn't just need evidence, they needed to act fast. Harper's team was prepared to take down key players in the conspiracy with a series of coordinated raids, arrests, and investigations. This wouldn't just be a public exposure, it would be a full-scale takedown. Harper's team worked seamlessly, with agents coordinating from every angle. The raids were clean, precise, and coordinated to maximize the impact. No one was safe. The walls that had once shielded these untouchables were finally coming down. Musk's phone rang again. It was Harper. "We've got them all, Elon. The key players are in custody. The evidence you provided was exactly what we needed to get this rolling." Musk smiled faintly, relief flooding his chest. But he knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The media coverage continued, and soon, every news outlet was broadcasting live coverage of the arrests, the raids, and the fallout. The world was watching, and they were starting to see the truth. These powerful figures weren't invincible. They were just as vulnerable as anyone else. Musk had done it. He had taken on the system, and with the help of his team and Agent Harper, he had brought it to its knees. But as the dust settled, he knew that his fight wasn't over. It was just entering a new phase. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The stage was set for the next chapter of the revolution. Musk had won the battle, but the war for the future was far from over. The fallout from the arrests and the revelations about the conspiracy was nothing short of explosive. Every major news outlet had been covering the scandal for days, and the stories kept coming. The world was gripped by the unprecedented takedown of some of the most powerful figures in politics, business, and law enforcement. But amidst all the chaos, there was a lingering question that hung in the air. What would come next? Musk had been lauded for his bravery, and many saw him as a hero. But behind the scenes, things were far from calm. The scale of the operation was immense, and the dismantling of the conspiracy was only the beginning of a long and arduous process. Musk stood in front of a massive monitor, watching as the world continued to digest the news. The arrest had sent shockwaves through every industry. CEOs had been taken into custody, entire financial networks had been dismantled, and corrupt politicians had been removed from power. The media was calling it the Musk revolution, but Musk knew better than to believe that the fight was over. "I thought we'd get more resistance," Ellis said, pacing the room. "But the public is already starting to turn. They're demanding more, asking for accountability from everyone involved. That's the easy part, Musk replied, his voice cool. The real battle is going to be in the courts. We need to make sure the people we've exposed don't just disappear into the system. They need to face real consequences for what they've done. Ellis looked at him, concern in his eyes. But there's still so much we don't know. There are more names, more connections. We don't even know who's still out there pulling the strings. Musk nodded. He'd known that the system they had uncovered was vast, like a spider's web stretching far and wide. The key figures were down, but the network remained. The people Musk had exposed were just the tip of the iceberg. There were still many questions left unanswered, and Musk knew that the path forward would be fraught with danger. In the wake of the raids and arrests, there were murmurs within the halls of power. A new kind of war had begun. While the public cheered Musk's victory, behind closed doors, the remnants of the conspiracy were quickly regrouping. These were the people who had built their empires on manipulation, secrecy, and ruthless control. They weren't going to go down without a fight. Musk knew that he had to remain vigilant. These people weren't just going to fold. They were resourceful and dangerous, and now, with their backs against the wall, they would fight harder than ever to preserve their power. The first sign of the brewing resistance came when a prominent media mogul, who had once been a key ally to Musk, was seen publicly distancing himself from the movement. He began to question Musk's motivations, suggesting that the billionaire had overstepped by targeting so many influential figures. Musk's phone buzzed, and a message appeared on the screen. The fight isn't over. They're already regrouping. They'll use the media to turn the tide against us. It was from Agent Harper. Things are about to get much worse, Musk muttered, his fingers tapping the edge of his desk. They'll try to discredit us, undermine everything we've done. They're going to make sure we don't finish what we started. Musk had always known that the battle was bigger than just exposing corruption. It was about changing the system, reforming the way power was distributed, and challenging the structures that had allowed these elites to thrive for so long. The arrests were only the first step. The real change would come when the people began to see how deep the corruption went and how many aspects of their lives had been shaped by these unseen hands. That's the key, Musk said, more to himself than anyone else in the room. People need to see the full picture. If we expose every part of the system, every way they've controlled us, then we can build something better. We can show them that it doesn't have to be this way. Ellis gave him a nod of agreement. We need a strategy to expose the whole infrastructure. Not just the faces, but the systems. The media, the courts, the financial institutions. We need to dismantle it all. Musk turned to the monitor, where a map of the global network was displayed, with lines connecting various players in the conspiracy, politicians, business leaders, media moguls, and shadowy figures from the world of finance. Every name and every connection was a piece of the puzzle that Musk needed to solve. But Musk was no longer just fighting to expose the truth. He was fighting for the future, a future that was no longer controlled by a select few, but one that was driven by innovation, progress, and, most importantly, transparency. We'll need to act fast, Musk said, determination in his eyes. The next phase is going to be about taking down the systems that allowed this to happen in the first place. We need to focus on the biggest threats, the ones still hiding in the shadows. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Musk's team worked around the clock, gathering new information, strengthening their alliances, and building their case for the next phase of the revolution. They had to be careful. This next move had to be strategic, and every step had to be calculated. The opposition had been caught off guard before, but now they would be prepared. Musk knew that in order to succeed, he had to expose the true extent of the system's control. He had to show the public that the problems weren't just about a few corrupt individuals. They were about the entire structure that had enabled their corruption. The media, the courts, the banks. All of these institutions were complicit in the system that had allowed the rich and powerful to stay in power. But Musk also knew that he couldn't do it alone. He needed allies, people who believed in the same ideals he did, who wanted to see a fairer world. And that's when he turned to the people, the ones who had supported him from the beginning, the ones who had seen the truth and understood the stakes. He needed to create a movement, one that wasn't just about taking down the powerful, but about building something better in their place. Musk stood in front of a camera once again, this time addressing his followers directly. The message was simple, but powerful. Everything we've done, everything we've exposed, it's just the beginning. The system we've been living under has been built on lies, manipulation, and control. But now, we have the opportunity to build something new. A world where the people have the power. A world where innovation and progress are no longer held hostage by those who wish to control it. We can create a future where everyone has a fair chance. But it starts with us, right here, right now. We're not just fighting for the truth, we're fighting for a new world. As Musk's revolution continued to unfold, the intensity of the backlash became evident. In the days following the unprecedented raids, the media's tone began to shift. What had initially been a celebration of justice now started to take on a more critical stance. Musk was no longer just the hero. He was becoming a symbol of resistance, but also of controversy. The powerful figures that had been exposed, though arrested, were not simply going to fade into obscurity. They had deep networks, vast resources, and a history of manipulation. And now, they were fighting back with everything they had. It didn't take long before Musk started to receive threats. His family, his friends, and even his closest allies were caught in the crossfire. The movement he had ignited was now a battleground, and those who stood behind him were vulnerable to the same shadowy forces that had controlled the system for so long. Musk sat in his office, staring at the stack of messages, emails, and reports on his desk. The team had been working overtime, sifting through the data, keeping the media spin in check, and ensuring that the narrative remained on track. But no matter how hard they tried, there was one problem that couldn't be solved through strategy alone: the relentless attacks on his personal life. "Have you seen this?" Ellis asked, holding up his phone, his face pale. Musk glanced at the screen. It was a video? A grainy recording of Musk's daughter, walking out of a restaurant. The caption read, "Elon Musk's family under threat. Is this the price of his revolution?" "Of course," Musk muttered, rubbing his temples. "They're trying to hit me where it hurts. The only thing they don't realize is that it's not just me I'm fighting for." He turned to Ellis, his tone hardening. "We need to strengthen the security around my family. They're not just going after me anymore. They're going after everything I stand for." Ellis nodded, already on the phone with the security team. As the attacks on Musk's personal life ramped up, so did the media's role in shaping public perception. The corporate media had long been complicit in the system Musk was fighting to expose. They had been paid to spin the truth, distort facts, and frame narratives to protect the powerful elites. But now, the media was turning its attention to Musk, painting him as a dangerous radical, a man who would stop at nothing to tear down the existing order. His message of hope, transparency, and revolution was being twisted into something threatening. They painted him as a villain, someone who had sparked a civil war without regard for the consequences. Musk watched, frustrated, as news outlets began reporting Elon Musk's fight against corruption takes a dark turn. Is the billionaire's revolution helping or hurting? A part of him knew this was coming. After all, revolutions weren't won without sacrifices. But the truth was, the stakes were higher now than ever before. And he wasn't going to let the narrative slip from his control. But in the midst of the chaos, a surprising ally emerged. It wasn't from the world of tech or politics. It was from the very place Musk had least expected, the entertainment industry. A-list celebrities, filmmakers, and even musicians who had long felt the weight of the system began to speak out in support of Musk. They understood all too well how the media could manipulate narratives to control public opinion. And they knew, as Musk did, that this was no longer just a fight for one man. It was a fight for freedom, for the future. One of the most prominent figures to publicly stand by Musk was Ava Sanchez, an Oscar-winning director known for her outspoken views on corporate corruption and the influence of media conglomerates. Ava had faced her own battles against the system, her career often sidelined by those who didn't want to see change. She was a fighter, and she saw Musk's revolution as the catalyst for a broader cultural shift. In a live-streamed interview, Ava said, "Elon Musk is doing what we all should have done a long time ago. He's taking down the system that keeps us all under its thumb. I stand by him, and I stand for the people who have been silenced for too long." Her words resonated with millions. The cultural elite, once wary of Musk's unorthodox methods, began to embrace him as a symbol of rebellion. Ava and other celebrities lent their voices, their platforms, and their influence to the cause, helping Musk to push through the media wall that had been erected against him. As the weeks went by, Musk's movement evolved. It was no longer just about exposing corruption at the top. It had become a rallying cry for anyone who felt oppressed by the system. People from all walks of life, from small business owners to factory workers, began to join the cause. The hashtag Free the People spread across social media, and protests began to take place in cities around the world. Musk's vision was slowly starting to take shape. He had always believed that the future could be different, more transparent, more innovative, and more equal. But to get there, he needed the people to rise up and demand it. The movement's momentum grew, and soon, Musk was no longer just a man fighting the system. He had become the face of a global uprising. But as the movement grew stronger, so did the danger. Musk's enemies, those still hidden in the shadows, were not going to let their empire crumble without a fight. They had already tried to attack Musk's family, tried to destroy his reputation. Now, they were taking more drastic steps. In one of the most daring moves yet, Musk received a message from an anonymous source. It was a warning. The people you trust aren't who they seem. Don't trust the next ally you meet. The message sent a chill down his spine. Who was trying to undermine him now? Was there a mole within his own organization? Or was this another elaborate scheme to sow distrust and confusion? Musk knew that the next phase of the revolution would be the most dangerous one yet. His every move was being watched, every word scrutinized. But he also knew one thing for certain. The people were with him, and he would fight, no matter the cost, to see his vision come to life. Musk's world had started to unravel in ways he never expected. The media was spinning its narrative. Allies were being pulled in different directions, and the pressures from all sides were intensifying. Yet, there was something far more sinister lurking beneath the surface: betrayal. It wasn't the kind of betrayal that comes from your enemies. No, this one was far worse. It came from someone he trusted, someone who had been in the inner circle since the beginning. The revelation hit Musk like a ton of bricks. It started with a quiet conversation, one he didn't think twice about. It was a routine check-in with his closest confidant and former ally, Jonathan Green, a well-respected figure in the financial world who had been instrumental in funding the movement's early initiatives. "Jonathan, I just got a tip," Ellis said, his voice tight. "We've got a serious problem. We've been compromised." Musk's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" Ellis dropped the bombshell. "Green's name is all over a list of financial transactions linked to several people we've exposed. There are ties to the same groups who were behind the corruption we've been fighting. Musk, he's been playing both sides." Musk's mind raced. Jonathan Green, a man who had been instrumental in fueling the revolution, was now implicated in the very conspiracy he had helped to tear apart. It was almost too much to believe. How could we have missed this? Musk muttered, frustration lacing his voice. Ellis was already pacing the room, clearly agitated. "We've been so focused on the big players, too focused maybe. We didn't see the smaller, more subtle links." Green had been careful. He played the part of the good guy. But now it's clear he's been feeding information to the opposition. Musk clenched his fists. "We can't afford to wait. We need to confront him. Now." The team worked quickly to arrange a meeting. Jonathan Green agreed to meet Musk in person, under the pretense of discussing the next steps for the movement. Musk knew that this encounter would be a defining moment, one that would shape the next chapter of the revolution. When Musk and Ellis arrived at the upscale restaurant where they were scheduled to meet, the tension in the air was palpable. Musk's heart pounded in his chest. He had trusted Jonathan implicitly. To discover that his closest ally had betrayed him felt like a knife to the gut. As they sat at the table, Green greeted them with a calm, measured demeanor, as if nothing were wrong. He ordered a drink, and they dove straight into conversation. "So, what's next?" Musk asked, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "Well, I think we're all headed in the right direction," Green said with a smile. "The movement is gaining momentum. People are waking up. Musk, you've done a lot more than anyone thought possible. Musk met Green's gaze, his eyes cold. You've done a lot too, Jonathan. But there's something I need to ask you. Something that's come to light. Green's smile faltered, but only for a moment. What are you talking about? Financial transactions. Ties to people we've been trying to expose. The names, Jonathan, they lead straight back to you. For a moment, the room was silent. Green's face remained calm, but Musk could see the subtle shift in his eyes. He knew something was wrong, but he hadn't expected it to come out this way. Musk, listen, Green said, leaning in slightly. You have to understand. I've been playing both sides because I had to. There's more at stake here than you know. You're fighting a war on one front, but the real battle is much bigger. The system you're trying to dismantle. It's too powerful. Musk's eyes narrowed. What do you mean, too powerful? You were supposed to be on my side. You were supposed to help change the system, not become part of it. Green sighed, almost regretfully. The truth is, Musk, you've been naive. These people, they won't let you win. Not without a price. I've been trying to protect you, trying to make sure we could come out of this alive. I did what I had to do. Musk could feel his anger rising. You betrayed me, Jonathan. You betrayed everyone who's been fighting for this cause. Not just you, Green replied, his voice quieter now. I was protecting all of us. There's a bigger picture here, Musk. You need to wake up and see it. The conversation didn't end well. Musk left the restaurant, his head spinning. The betrayal from Jonathan Green felt like a deep wound, one that would take time to heal. But there was no time for that now. Musk's revolution was gaining ground, but the forces arrayed against him were growing stronger. That night, Musk's phone buzzed again. It was from Agent Harper. We've got a problem. Green's involvement goes deeper than we thought. He's not just feeding information. He's been working with the opposition to funnel resources into the media, control the narrative. This isn't just a betrayal, it's sabotage. Musk's mind raced. He needed to move quickly, before Green could do any more damage. But the question remained, who else could he trust? Who was still loyal? In the wake of the betrayal, Musk realized that the movement was no longer just about taking down the corrupt elites. It was about protecting the revolution itself. The people who had been with him from the beginning were now under threat, and the consequences of failure were more dire than ever. Musk called an emergency meeting with his closest allies. Ellis, Agent Harper, and several other key members of the team gathered in the war room, where plans were drawn up and strategies were debated. We have to expose Green, Musk said, his voice grim. The world needs to know what he's been doing. But we also need to make sure that this doesn't fracture the movement. We can't afford to lose the people's trust. Ellis nodded. We'll get the word out. But we have to be careful. If Green's still connected to the opposition, he's dangerous. We can't let him turn this into a public spectacle. Musk turned to Agent Harper. How do we stop him? We need to find out exactly what he's been doing, how deep his connections go, Harper replied. If we expose his ties to the media and the opposition, we can undermine his credibility. But we need solid proof. We don't have time to make mistakes. The road ahead would be treacherous. Musk had just lost someone he had trusted completely, and now he had to figure out how to turn the tide. But one thing was certain, he wouldn't stop. The revolution was far from over, and Musk was ready to fight back with everything he had. The stakes had never been higher, and Musk knew that every move from here on out would need to be calculated. There were no more safe spaces, no more trust without verification. But as the world watched, the next phase of the revolution was about to unfold, and Musk would stop at nothing to make sure it succeeded. As the dust settled from the betrayal of Jonathan Green, Musk found himself grappling with the heavy realization that the revolution he had set into motion was far from a straightforward path. Every step forward seemed to be met with a new obstacle, and now the lines between allies and enemies had blurred to the point of near irrelevance. It was no longer about good versus evil. Everything had become a complex game of survival. In the wake of Green's exposure, the public's perception of Musk was at a crossroads. The media, ever eager to sensationalize, seized on the story of the fallen ally, painting it as another one of Musk's many failures. But the story wasn't over yet, and Musk knew that the stakes had shifted dramatically. It didn't take long before the media storm began. They painted Musk as a man struggling to maintain control of the very revolution he had sparked. "Is Elon Musk's movement a house of cards?" read one headline. Another suggested, "The revolution turns on its architect." The press knew that stories of betrayal and scandal sold, and Musk's every misstep became grist for the mill. The whispers were louder now, both in the mainstream media and online. People were questioning Musk's motives, wondering if he was truly on their side, or if he had merely manipulated them into a larger game for his own gain. The tech billionaire who had promised to change the world now seemed fragile, vulnerable. But Musk wasn't one to retreat into the shadows. Despite the pressure mounting around him, he doubled down. He made a public statement, something powerful, something personal. "This isn't about one person," Musk declared in an exclusive interview. "This is about all of us. The system, the corruption, the manipulation. It goes far beyond a few bad apples. It's the foundation, the core of how we're all controlled. And I'll be damned if we stop fighting now just because of a setback." The interview was streamed to millions, and though the press continued its onslaught, Musk's words seemed to resonate with his core supporters. For now, they were with him. But that didn't mean the opposition was done. Though Green's betrayal had shaken Musk to his core, there was one other issue he couldn't ignore: the growing threat within his own organization. The revolution had drawn in many, but with the increased attention came the risk of infiltration. Musk was no longer just fighting the elites. Now, he had to contend with those who had once stood with him, but whose loyalty was in question. If someone like Jonathan Green could betray him, who else could be playing a double game? Ellis was quick to act. He initiated a full security sweep of all key personnel within Musk's inner circle. The investigation turned up little, at least on the surface. But Ellis wasn't satisfied. There were too many unexplained gaps, too many questions left unanswered. "What if this goes deeper than we think?" Ellis asked, sitting across from Musk late one night in their private conference room. "What if the entire structure of this movement has been compromised from the inside?" Musk rubbed his temples, exhaustion weighing heavily on him. "We can't go down that path. I need to focus on the people, the ones who are truly with us. We can't let paranoia tear us apart." But the nagging thought wouldn't leave him. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that the fight for the future was just as much about who he could trust as it was about taking down the corrupt system. A few days after the media storm had died down, Musk received a message that jolted him out of his thoughts. It was from Eva Sanchez, the famed director who had spoken in his defense during the height of the scandal. She had a plan, a bold one. She had been working with other influential figures in the entertainment industry, and together, they had devised a way to bypass the media's stranglehold over the narrative. They were planning a live-streamed event, an unprecedented global broadcast that would bring together the voices of the people, the victims of the corrupt system, and Musk himself. It would be the ultimate statement, a direct challenge to the elites who had tried to shut him down. Ava's message was clear. It was time for the people to rise, to take control of the narrative once and for all. Musk hesitated for only a moment. He knew the risks. Such a public spectacle could make him an even larger target, and the powers he was up against wouldn't take kindly to such a bold move. But at the same time, the opportunity was too big to pass up. This wasn't just about him. This was about the people who had been pushed to the margins for far too long. The stakes had never been higher. "I'm in," Musk replied, a sense of resolve settling over him. "Let's show them what we're made of." In the days leading up to the event, the team worked tirelessly to coordinate everything. There was a sense of urgency in the air. This wasn't going to be a typical press conference or interview. It was a statement. It was a declaration of war on the old systems, rallying cry for those who had been oppressed, silenced, or manipulated. Ava brought in a team of top-tier filmmakers to craft a message that was as visually striking as it was powerful. They would use cutting-edge technology to create a cinematic experience that would capture the heart and soul of the revolution. The broadcast would feature footage from protests, interviews with those directly impacted by the corruption, and personal stories of the movement's many unsung heroes. Musk's role in the event was pivotal. He would speak directly to the people, cutting through the noise of the media. There would be no filter, no middleman. It would be Musk, raw and unfiltered, telling the world exactly what was at stake. The day of the event arrived, and the energy in the air was electric. The live stream was set to begin in just a few hours, and already millions were tuning in from across the globe. There was an overwhelming sense of anticipation, but also tension. The risks were clear, and no one knew for sure how the elites would respond to such a bold act. As the broadcast began, the screen went dark for a few moments, heightening the suspense. Then, a single light illuminated Musk, standing on stage in a stark, minimalist setting. His face was calm, but his eyes betrayed the gravity of the moment. Today, we are not just speaking to the world. We are speaking for the world, Musk began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. The system that has oppressed us for generations is crumbling. The people have spoken, and we will not be silenced. The camera panned to images of protests, marches, and the faces of everyday people who had joined the fight. The energy was palpable, the unity undeniable. But Musk wasn't just talking about the system anymore. He was talking about something bigger, a vision for the future, a future where the people controlled their own destiny, a future where corruption no longer reigned supreme. The broadcast continued for hours, growing in intensity. Musk's words were powerful, but it was the stories of the people, their raw, unfiltered experiences, that captivated the audience. As the broadcast concluded, a palpable shift occurred. The tide had turned. Musk's bold move had reinvigorated the movement, breathing new life into it. People were galvanized, ready to take on whatever came next. But as the revolution gained momentum, Musk knew the battle was far from over. The forces he was up against were entrenched, powerful, and would stop at nothing to maintain control. The real fight was only just beginning. The global broadcast had left an indelible mark on the world. The message Musk delivered resonated deeply with millions, shaking the foundations of the system that had oppressed people for decades. But, as is often the case with movements of such magnitude, the ripple effect wasn't all positive. While the public response was overwhelmingly supportive, the powers that be had only just begun to fight back. Musk had been expecting resistance, but the intensity of it took him by surprise. Within hours of the broadcast, the elite forces had mobilized. Social media accounts began to spread disinformation at an unprecedented rate, accusing Musk of attempting to undermine democracy, stoke chaos, and incite rebellion. These messages were not just being pushed by bots. High-profile political figures, media outlets, and even former allies of Musk began to distance themselves, denouncing him and his revolution. The backlash was swift. The very people who had cheered Musk on just days ago were now questioning his motives. "What's the real cost of this movement?" one headline asked. "Is Elon Musk the savior or the new villain?" Another claimed, "A movement built on chaos. Musk's revolution is a threat to global stability." In the face of these attacks, Musk remained undeterred. He had known from the beginning that the path he was walking would not be easy. Yet, as the pressure mounted, he felt the weight of the responsibility he had taken on. "It's like fighting a shadow," Musk muttered to Ellis as they stood together in the private war room, reviewing the latest reports. "We're making all the right moves, but they just keep shifting, keep adapting. It's like we're a step behind them all the time." Ellis crossed his arms, his expression grim. "They've been in control for so long, Musk. But that's the point. We're not supposed to be in control. We're supposed to break the system down, decentralize it. Let the people decide." Musk nodded, his mind racing. "The people are with us. We just need to remind them that we're fighting for them, for something better." But deep down, Musk knew the war was far from won. With the elites growing more desperate, it was clear that they would stop at nothing to maintain their grip on power. As Musk prepared for the next phase of the movement, the tension in his team was palpable. The pressure had taken a toll on everyone, with allies turning into enemies and the world watching every move. Mistakes could be fatal. Then, just when Musk thought things couldn't get more complicated, an unexpected player entered the scene. A secretive group known only as the Vanguard began to make waves. The Vanguard had always existed in the shadows, pulling strings, but they had remained largely unseen, operating behind the scenes, unacknowledged by the public. Their emergence marked a dangerous turn in the revolution. At first, it was small, whispers of their involvement, shadowy figures popping up in covert operations. But it quickly escalated. They had resources, connections, and, most importantly, information. Their network stretched across governments, corporations, and financial institutions, and they had been monitoring Musk's every move since the early days of his crusade. The Vanguard's interference was subtle but powerful. Anonymous messages began to surface, casting doubt on Musk's sincerity. New media campaigns were launched, insinuating that Musk was simply replacing one corrupt system with another. Some even suggested that Musk was a pawn in a much larger game. Musk's team was rattled. There was an air of suspicion among them now, more than ever before. No one knew who the Vanguard really was, what they wanted, or what they had planned. But one thing was clear. They were powerful, and they were not afraid to use their influence. Amidst the chaos, an unexpected betrayal emerged, this time, from within Musk's own ranks. It was a quiet revelation, a small but significant piece of information that would turn the tide in ways Musk could never have anticipated. Agent Harper, who had been by Musk's side throughout the revolution, had become an integral part of the movement's inner circle. But it was Harper who now found himself at the center of a storm that would rip the organization apart. It started with a routine check of communication channels. Ellis was monitoring the data flow when he came across an encrypted message, one that didn't look quite right. It was sent to an untraceable account, one that hadn't been used in months. After further investigation, it became clear that the message contained inside information, intelligence that had been fed directly to the Vanguard. Ellis was furious. "It's Harper," he said, his voice barely above a whisper as he stared at the encrypted message. "He's been leaking information. He's been feeding them everything." Musk's blood ran cold. He had trusted Harper implicitly, had considered him a brother in arms. To discover this was like a punch to the gut. "Are you sure?" Musk asked, his voice strained with disbelief. Ellis nodded. "We can trace everything. The leaks, the messages, the intel. It all leads back to him." Musk clenched his fists, the betrayal hitting him harder than anything before. Harper had been with him from the start, had fought for the revolution. But now, it seemed, he had his own agenda. "We can't afford any more surprises," Musk said through gritted teeth. "We need to act, and we need to do it fast. Get Harper now." The confrontation was inevitable. Musk called Harper into a secure room, the weight of what he was about to do pressing heavily on him. When Harper entered, he seemed calm, almost too calm. "Musk," Harper said, his voice tinged with an air of familiarity. "What's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." Musk didn't waste time. He slid the encrypted message across the table. "Care to explain this?" Harper's expression flickered for a brief moment, just a fraction of a second, but Musk saw it. The guilt, the realization that his secret was exposed. "Harper," Musk began, his voice low but firm. "Why?" Harper let out a heavy sigh. "Musk, you don't understand. This isn't just about you. This isn't just about the revolution. There are forces at play here that you can't begin to comprehend. The Vanguard, they have the resources to make sure this revolution never sees the light of day. I didn't have a choice." Musk stared at him, his eyes burning with disbelief and rage. "You've been playing both sides. All this time." "It was never about sides, Musk," Harper replied, his voice cracking. "It was about survival. They'll destroy everything if they have to. They were always one step ahead of you." Musk had a choice to make: confront Harper and risk losing yet another key ally, or allow him to walk free and continue to undermine everything they had worked for. It was a decision that would shape the future of the revolution. Musk stood up, his decision clear. "Get out. We can't have traitors in this fight." Harper didn't protest. Instead, he simply nodded and turned to leave. Musk watched him go, knowing that this moment, this betrayal, was yet another step toward the collapse of everything he had worked for. But as Harper walked out the door, Musk couldn't shake the feeling that they were now more exposed than ever before. The real enemy had just revealed itself. The next few days were a whirlwind of chaos and uncertainty. News outlets continued to bombard Musk with accusations of betrayal, manipulation, and even treason. But the true weight of the situation wasn't in the public eye. It was in the cracks forming within his team. The revelation about Harper's betrayal had shaken their foundation, leaving Musk to wonder who could be trusted and who might have their own hidden agendas. While the media pushed their narrative, the ground war in the revolution had to continue. Musk's team couldn't afford to slow down. Every day brought new challenges: cyber attacks on their communications, pressure from the elites to stop the movement, and now, the looming shadow of the vanguard. But, in the midst of this storm, an unexpected call came, and that would change everything. It was from an old ally, someone Musk had never anticipated reaching out to him at this critical moment. Musk was in his war room, staring at a map of the world showing key locations of their operations, when his phone buzzed. It was a secure line, one that only a select few knew about. He picked it up without hesitation, recognizing the name on the screen. "Julia?" "Don't act surprised, Musk." Julia's voice came through the speaker, her tone cool, almost amused. "You didn't think I would just stand by and watch you burn, did you?" Julia Westbrook. Once a prominent member of Musk's inner circle, Julia had left years ago after a disagreement over the direction of his companies. She had been disillusioned by his growing ambition and had chosen to forge her own path, far away from the chaos Musk had been creating. But now, here she was, calling at the most critical moment. "I didn't expect to hear from you, especially not after everything that happened," Musk replied, his voice cautious. He had always admired Julia's intelligence, but he couldn't forget how their relationship had ended. "Look, I don't have time for small talk," Julia said, cutting to the chase. "I've been monitoring the situation from the outside. You're up against more than just the vanguard, Musk. There are factions within the government that are moving against you. The elites aren't just going to back down. They're regrouping, strategizing." Musk's grip tightened on the phone. "So what do you want from me? After all this time?" Julia paused before replying. "I want you to listen. I can help you, but I won't do it alone. We need to form an alliance, one that stretches across every sector. The only way you're going to win this war is if you bring together the people who have been on the sidelines, waiting for a chance to act. The silent majority." Julia's words were a revelation. Musk had always thought that his network of loyalists was enough, but she was right. The elites controlled everything: politics, media, finance. And the vanguard had proven that they had the power to manipulate the system from the shadows. What Musk needed was a larger, more diverse coalition, one that would span industries, cultures, and borders. "I can't do this alone," Musk admitted, running his hand through his hair. "I need allies, but I can't trust anyone anymore. Not after Harper." "I understand. That's why you need me." Julia's voice softened. "I know people you don't even know exist. They've been waiting for this moment, just like you've been. I have the contacts, the network, the resources to make this work." Musk thought for a moment, his mind running through the possibilities. If Julia was right, this could be the game changer. The vanguard had too much power, and without an unbreakable alliance, Musk and his team would continue to be one step behind. "I'm listening," Musk finally said. Julia continued. "I'll help you rally support from global tech leaders, military contacts, and political figures. But you need to trust me. This won't be a clean partnership, Musk. You'll have to play things differently. No more idealism. The world you're fighting against is ruthless. If you want to win, you need to play by their rules." Musk felt the weight of the decision pressing on him. Julia was right. He couldn't afford to be naive anymore. But could he really trust her after everything that had happened? "I'll need time to think," Musk said slowly, "but we'll meet soon." As Musk worked through the complexities of his decision, the revolution on the ground continued to gain momentum. Despite the tensions within his inner circle, the people remained steadfast. The protests, the strikes, the demands for change. It was clear that Musk's message had sparked something deep within the hearts of millions. However, the enemy was not just external anymore. It was internal. The discontent among his closest allies grew as the stakes got higher. Those who had once supported him unconditionally were now questioning every move he made. Was he still the man they believed in? Or had the power of the revolution changed him? Ellis was particularly torn. He was fiercely loyal to Musk, but he couldn't ignore the dangers that were cropping up. The security risks were escalating daily, and now with Harper's betrayal still fresh in their minds, they had to rethink every strategy, every move. Ellis knew that to succeed, They needed to be sharper, more prepared. "I'm not sure about Julia," Ellis admitted one evening as they sat together, reviewing their next steps. "I know she's talented, but we don't have the luxury of second-guessing ourselves anymore. What if this is a trap?" Musk looked at his friend, weighing the concern in his eyes. He knew that trust was the foundation of everything they had built, but he couldn't deny that Julia's proposal had merit. He had always admired her strategic mind, and right now, he needed someone who could think beyond the limits of their immediate circle. "I don't know what else we can do, Ellis," Musk said, exhaustion heavy in his voice. "We're losing ground, and I can't keep fighting alone. If she's sincere, this could be the ally we need. But if not," he trailed off, the consequences of failure looming large in his mind. Ellis sighed, shaking his head. "It's a gamble, Musk, but I guess we don't have much of a choice." Days later, Musk agreed to meet Julia in person. The rendezvous took place in a remote location, far away from prying eyes. Musk knew the risks. If the elites had spies watching his every move, a meeting like this could be disastrous. But he couldn't afford to wait any longer. Julia was waiting for him when he arrived, her face more serious than he remembered. "I hope you're ready to play the game, Musk," she said as she greeted him. "I'm ready," Musk replied, his voice steady. "But I won't compromise everything I believe in. If you want my help, it has to be on my terms." Julia nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "Agreed. But understand this. What we're about to do will change the world. And there will be sacrifices. Are you willing to make them?" Musk didn't hesitate. "Yes, whatever it takes." As the meeting drew to a close, Musk realized that the future of the revolution was hanging in the balance. With Julia's help, they could push the vanguard back. But it wouldn't come without a cost. Every step forward would be harder than the last. And there was no turning back now. Musk walked away from that meeting with a new sense of purpose. The world was watching, and it was up to him to lead this revolution to victory. But with each passing day, the line between right and wrong, friend and foe, blurred further. Trust was becoming more and more elusive. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of red and orange, Musk sat alone in his office, staring at the vast array of information spread out in front of him. The stakes were higher than ever, and the pressure was mounting with each passing hour. After his meeting with Julia, he was both reinvigorated and filled with doubt. He had made a choice, but now came the hard part, living with it. The revolution had entered a new phase, and the game was no longer just about defeating the vanguard. It was about transforming society, creating a new world order. And that would require allies, resources, and above all, control. Musk was no stranger to pressure, but this was different. The weight of a world hung in the balance, and every decision would shape the future of humanity. The clock ticked relentlessly as Musk worked late into the night, formulating a plan that would unite the fractured world. Julia's proposal had been bold, and as far as Musk could tell, it was the only viable option. But it wasn't without risks. Julia's contacts were scattered across the globe, and forging alliances with people he hadn't met and whose motives were unclear felt like stepping into uncharted waters. Still, the alternative, continuing to fight alone, seemed even riskier. He needed more than just loyalty. He needed an entire coalition of people willing to risk everything for the cause. If they were going to take down the vanguard, they needed the resources, the influence, and most importantly, the numbers. Musk thought about his team: Ellis, Harper, the others. His once ironclad inner circle now fractured and uncertain. He had always prided himself on being able to see the big picture, but lately, the pieces had started to feel out of focus. What would it take to restore trust? Could he ever fully repair the damage Harper's betrayal had done? And if Julia's alliances were truly genuine, could they really be the catalyst that would help him rise above this betrayal? Focus, Musk muttered under his breath. The revolution couldn't wait. The global economy was already teetering on the edge, and unrest was spreading like wildfire. People were angry at the corrupt system that had held them down for too long, angry at the lies, the manipulation. Musk was the face of that change, but was he the leader the world needed? As Musk continued to draft his plan, news reports flooded in. The vanguard had made a move, tightening their grip on key global financial institutions. They had managed to sway entire governments, and it wasn't long before their influence reached Musk's own network. A message appeared on Musk's encrypted device, a message that made his heart skip a beat. It was from an unexpected source, Harper. "I know I've made mistakes, Elon," the message began. "But I need you to understand, everything I did was for the right reasons. I didn't betray you. I was protecting you from something much worse. The Vanguard's hold is stronger than you think, and they have plans for you. Plans that go beyond anything you could imagine." Musk's jaw clenched. He couldn't deny the pang of betrayal, but he also knew that Harper was no fool. If he had done something to warn him, then maybe there was more to the story. It wasn't the first time Musk had been blindsided, but this felt different. He couldn't afford to ignore the possibility that Harper had been trying to protect him. He quickly tapped out a reply. "If you think there's something you haven't told me, Harper, now is the time. What are they planning?" Outside the walls of Musk's office, the world was changing. In major cities, protests were escalating, and the people were demanding answers. The system was starting to crumble, and the Vanguard's grip was tightening, using fear, corruption, and violence to control the masses. But even as they tried to suppress the revolution, a spark of hope was igniting in unexpected places. Julia's network had been putting together a list of key individuals and organizations willing to stand against the Vanguard, and it was growing by the hour. But the question remained, could they trust each other? The lines between friend and foe were becoming increasingly blurred, and Musk was starting to question his ability to trust anyone, including Julia. He knew that to win, he would need to harness not just the power of technology, but the power of the people. The revolution had already begun, but it was far from over. The real fight was just beginning. The next morning, a meeting was scheduled with Julia's allies. Musk knew the time had come to make a final decision. His revolution could no longer be just a dream. It had to be an organized, disciplined force. With Julia's help, he was gathering key figures from various sectors: technology, finance, politics, and even the military. The question was, could they trust each other? Could they unite against a common enemy? As Musk walked into the room, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. He scanned the room, noting the faces of the people who would soon become his allies or his enemies. Each person there had something to offer, but each one also had their own agenda. Julia stood at the head of the table, her presence commanding attention. She greeted Musk with a nod but said nothing. The silence in the room was palpable. Everyone was waiting for Musk to speak. He cleared his throat and addressed the group. "We're at a crossroads," he said, his voice steady. "The Vanguard is not just a threat to me, it's a threat to everyone here. What they've done to this world is unacceptable, and it's time we do something about it. But to succeed, we need to work together. We need to put aside our differences and focus on the end goal. No egos, no personal agendas. Just one mission, to take down the Vanguard and reclaim this world." Musk's words hung in the air. The room was still, the weight of his declaration sinking in. He could feel the eyes of the room on him, some skeptical, others hopeful. But deep down, he knew that this moment would define everything. As the meeting continued, the alliances formed on paper started to feel fragile. Trust was in short supply. Musk could see it in the way people hesitated to speak up, the way their eyes darted nervously when Julia made suggestions. Each word was weighed, each decision scrutinized. But the reality was that they didn't have the luxury of time. The Vanguard wasn't waiting, and neither could they. The revolution was at a tipping point. But was the new coalition strong enough to withstand the pressure? Musk wasn't sure yet. But he knew one thing. He couldn't do this alone. The stakes had never been higher, and the fight had never been more critical. The revolution had reached a critical juncture, the point of no return. Musk felt the weight of the world pressing on his shoulders. The decisions made now would shape the course of history. Every move, every word spoken, held the potential to either propel them toward victory or doom them to failure. The alliances he had reluctantly formed, especially with Julia, were proving to be both a lifeline and a liability. As the days passed, tensions mounted. On the one hand, the world's eyes were now fixed squarely on the revolution. The protests, the rallies, the cries for justice, all were signs of the movement gaining momentum. But on the other hand, The forces opposing them had grown stronger. The vanguard, with its vast network of influence, was not a foe that could be easily toppled. Musk stood in his office, staring at the maps spread across his desk. It was more than just a collection of countries and regions. It was a visual representation of the battle he was fighting. Key locations where his coalition had managed to make inroads were marked in bright red, but the green spots, showing areas controlled by the vanguard, outnumbered them. Time was running out. Every hour counted. Julia had done her part. She had worked tirelessly to bring in key figures from all walks of life. Wealthy investors, military leaders, politicians, even rogue hackers who had been lurking in the shadows, waiting for a cause to rally behind. Together, they formed a diverse coalition, one that spanned the globe. But as their numbers grew, so did the friction between them. Each person came with their own agenda, and the goal of overthrowing the vanguard seemed less like a unified cause and more like a series of competing interests. Musk knew that if they were to succeed, they would need to set aside their differences and work together as one cohesive unit. But in the back of his mind, he couldn't shake the nagging thought that some in the room weren't as loyal as they appeared. Julia, in particular, remained a mystery, her motivations unclear, her past filled with too many unanswered questions. Still, he couldn't afford to waste time. Every day they spent in negotiation was a day the vanguard grew stronger. It was time to take action. Just as Musk was about to make his decision, another message appeared on his device. It was from Harper. "Musk, you have to understand. This goes deeper than you think. The vanguard is not just a group of elite figures pulling strings from the shadows. They have infiltrated every level of society. The government, the military, the media. It's all part of their plan. And they have a contingency in place should things start to go wrong. Trust me, you're not just fighting them. You're fighting a system that's been in place for decades." Musk's heart raced. He had known the vanguard was powerful, but Harper's message painted a far darker picture than he had anticipated. The infiltration was deeper than anyone realized. And if what Harper said was true, their fight was about to get even more dangerous. "What's their contingency?" Musk typed back, his fingers trembling. "How can we prepare?" Harper's reply came quickly. "The vanguard has its own private army, highly trained, highly secretive. They've been planting them in key positions for years. You're not just going to face resistance in the streets. You'll face them everywhere." Musk stared at the message for a long time. He had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed sent a chill down his spine. The vanguard wasn't just an enemy. It was a beast with 1,000 heads. As Musk began to process Harper's warning, the door to his office creaked open. Ellis stepped inside, looking more serious than Musk had ever seen him. "I've been going through the intel," Ellis said, sitting down across from Musk. "There's something we need to talk about. Julia, I don't trust her. I don't know what she's up to, but I don't think her agenda aligns with ours." Musk didn't respond immediately. His mind was racing, the pieces of the puzzle shifting in front of him. Ellis had always been loyal, and if he was starting to doubt Julia, that meant something. Musk had sensed that Julia was playing a delicate game, but hearing Ellis voice his concerns made him wonder if they had misjudged her from the beginning. "I know," Musk said quietly, "but we can't afford to cut ties with her right now. She's our best shot at pulling this off." Ellis shook his head, frustration evident in his eyes. "Musk, you're not seeing the bigger picture. If we keep working with her, we're risking everything. You need to think about what happens when this whole thing blows up in our faces." Musk felt the weight of Ellis's words. He had always relied on his friend's judgment, but this was different. They were on the brink of something monumental, and any wrong move could spell disaster. "I'm not blind to the risks," Musk replied, his voice tight. "But right now, I don't see another option. We're in too deep." As tensions simmered between Musk and his team, a sudden development threw everything into chaos. A major vanguard asset had been compromised. One of their top officials had been exposed, and his ties to the underground resistance had been uncovered. This leak sent shockwaves through the ranks of the vanguard, and in a rare moment of vulnerability, they made a bold move. They targeted Musk directly. A high-level assassination attempt was foiled when Musk's security team intercepted a group of elite vanguard operatives attempting to infiltrate his compound. But the message was clear. They were willing to go to any lengths to stop him. Musk was shaken, but the near miss only fueled his resolve. It was no longer just about overthrowing the vanguard, it was about survival. They had drawn a line in the sand, and there was no turning back. With the vanguard now actively hunting him, Musk knew the time for preparation was over. He gathered his team for one final strategy session. The plan was simple: hit the vanguard hard and fast before they could regroup. "This is it," Musk said, his voice unwavering. "We strike now, before they have a chance to retaliate. We move on their key strongholds. We cripple their operations, disrupt their network. This ends today." The room fell silent as the team absorbed Musk's words. They all knew the risks, but they also knew that the only way to win was to go all in. No more hesitation. No more second-guessing. Ellis stood up and looked at Musk with a steely gaze. "You know what this means, right? If we go through with this, there's no going back." Musk met his gaze, determination in his eyes. "I know, but we don't have a choice anymore." The day of the strike had arrived. Musk stood in the war room of his compound, eyes glued to the large digital screens displaying real-time updates from around the globe. The moment had come. It was time to take down the vanguard. The plan, a culmination of months of preparation, would strike at their core. Their financial institutions, their communication networks, their political strongholds. If they could cut the head off the serpent, perhaps the body would collapse under its own weight. The revolutionaries had trained for this day. Soldiers from Julia's network were positioned in key locations, awaiting their orders. Hackers were poised to breach the vanguard's most secure systems, and drones were in the air, ready to make their move. Musk's phone buzzed on the table in front of him. A message from Harper. "We've got a problem. The vanguard has anticipated our moves. They've already mobilized their countermeasures. It's a trap. You need to pull back." Musk read the message twice, his heart sinking. Harper had been warning him about this, the vanguard's contingency plan. It was clear now. They had been one step ahead, and Musk had walked right into their trap. Minutes later, chaos erupted. The room was filled with the shrill sound of alarm bells. Musk's team scrambled to respond as a flood of encrypted messages poured in, indicating that key targets had been compromised before they could be fully disabled. Vanguard operatives had infiltrated their systems and had taken control of their communications. "Move out. Now!" Musk shouted, adrenaline pumping through his veins. The revolution had just been turned upside down. They were no longer in control. Ellis grabbed Musk by the shoulder, urgency in his voice. "We need to pull back, Elon. They've already surrounded the compound. The military's moving in. We can't fight them off, not like this." Musk's eyes flickered to the screens, watching as vanguard forces moved in from all directions, cutting off escape routes. Their plan was failing. All the work, all the sacrifice, it was slipping through their fingers like sand. But Musk wasn't one to back down, not when the stakes were this high. He turned to face his team, resolve hardening his features. "We can't stop now. This is the moment we've been fighting for. If we retreat, we lose everything." Ellis' face was a mixture of disbelief and concern. "Elon, we're outnumbered. We're outgunned. This isn't the revolution you're thinking of. They'll wipe us out." Musk didn't respond. His mind was already racing, calculating the next move. In the back of his mind, he knew Ellis was right. But retreat wasn't an option. They couldn't let the vanguard win. As the vanguard closed in, Musk had only one option left, a desperate gamble. He reached for the U.S. Secret Service badge he had kept hidden for years. It wasn't just a symbol of his power in the U.S. political sphere. It was his ace in the hole. The badge would grant him access to secret communication channels, and perhaps, just perhaps, it would provide a way to turn the tide. He pressed the button on the side of the badge, activating a secure line directly to the U.S. government's highest authorities. He needed their help, and he needed it now. "Get me the president," Musk said, his voice tight. "Now." Seconds later, the line connected. Musk could hear the unmistakable voice of the president on the other end. "Elon? What the hell's going on? We've been monitoring the situation, but it's falling apart fast. Do you need evacuation?" Musk's mind raced. He could hear the urgency in the president's voice. The entire world was watching. "I need backup. Right now." The vanguard has launched a full assault. We've been set up. I need the military to move in, but I can't do this without your support. It's all or nothing." There was a long pause on the line, and then the president spoke again, his voice full of gravitas. "You have our full support, Elon. We'll initiate Operation Phoenix. Stand by." As the call ended, Musk's heart pounded in his chest. Operation Phoenix. It was a classified operation that would mobilize every resource the U.S. military had at its disposal. If the president's word was to be believed, they were on the verge of something bigger than any of them could have anticipated. Musk turned to Ellis, who had been watching with a mixture of skepticism and fear. "We're not alone in this anymore. The U.S. military is coming." Ellis stared at him, disbelief still written across his face. "You're sure about this? You're putting everything on the line, Elon." "I have no choice," Musk replied, his voice steady. "If we're going to win this, we need to show the world what we're capable of. And we need to do it now." The minutes that followed were a blur of action and chaos. The vanguard forces were closing in, but now, Musk's team had a fighting chance. With the military coming to their aid, the battle for control shifted. Military reinforcements arrived, striking down the vanguard's forward units with precision. Drones began to circle above the compound, providing tactical surveillance. For the first time in days, Musk saw a glimmer of hope. But it wasn't just the military's presence that changed the tide. Julia's forces had been ready to strike at a moment's notice. Using a mix of guerrilla tactics and underground networks, they launched a counterattack, overwhelming vanguard positions and crippling key infrastructure. The revolution was no longer just a movement of the people. It was an unstoppable force, a coalition of the willing, ready to tear down the systems that had held them down for so long. As Musk watched the battle unfold from his position in the war room, he couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. The forces arrayed against them were formidable, but they were being dismantled one by one. The vanguard's carefully laid plans were crumbling, their grip on power slipping away. But even as victory seemed within reach, Musk knew the fight was far from over. The battle might be won, but the war was still ongoing. The world was forever changed, and it would take time, perhaps years, to rebuild what had been broken. The next step, Musk knew, would be critical. The world would need to be rebuilt from the ashes, and it would require more than just a revolution. It would require unity, trust, and leadership. The battle was over, but the true test had only just begun. Musk stood in the rubble of what had once been a stronghold of the vanguard. The air was thick with dust, the faint smell of burning debris lingering in the background. Despite the victory, the cost had been high. The revolution had torn through the very fabric of society, and the aftermath was a landscape in chaos. Reports were pouring in from every corner of the world. Cities had fallen into turmoil, governments were scrambling to regain control, and the world's financial systems were on the verge of collapse. The vanguard might have been taken down, but their influence had left deep scars that would take years to heal. Musk had never wanted to be the face of a global revolution. But now, as he watched the people rallying around him, as they chanted his name in the streets, he understood the gravity of the situation. He wasn't just a leader anymore. He was a symbol of hope, a beacon in a world that had been torn apart by greed, corruption, and power. As the world outside the compound descended into chaos, Julia arrived, her eyes burning with a mixture of pride and sorrow. She had been instrumental in the fight against the vanguard, but now that the dust had settled, Musk couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. There was a coldness to her demeanor that unsettled him. "Did we do it?" Musk asked, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. The revolution had been brutal, but he couldn't afford to rest just yet. There was still much work to be done. Julia gave him a solemn nod. "We did it, but it's only the beginning." Her words sent a chill down Musk's spine. "What do you mean?" "There's a power vacuum," she explained, "and you're not the only one with ambitions. The vanguard's downfall has left a void, and the wrong people will move to fill it." Musk's heart sank. He had hoped that their victory would bring about a new era of peace, but Julia's words reminded him that power was never easily relinquished. It wasn't just the vanguard they had to fight. It was the system itself, the deeply embedded structures that had allowed them to thrive in the first place. Musk's worst fears were confirmed when Ellis burst into the room, his face grim. "We've got a problem. The remnants of the Vanguard are regrouping. They've already begun making deals with rogue states and criminal syndicates. They're building an army of their own." Musk's hands clenched into fists. "We just tore them apart, and now they're back?" "It's not that simple," Ellis said, pacing. "What we didn't anticipate was how deep their reach went. We've only scratched the surface. They've got assets everywhere, military, political, financial. We've taken down their leaders, but the structure remains intact." Musk rubbed his eyes, the weight of leadership bearing down on him like never before. He had thought that the battle against the Vanguard was the hardest part, but he was quickly realizing that it was only the beginning. Their enemies had more resources, more influence, and more power than they could have imagined. "I don't care about their resources," Musk said, his voice firm. "We've made our stand, and we're not backing down. But we need a plan. A real one." Ellis nodded. "We need to bring in more allies. The world needs a new order, and we're the ones who have to build it. But we can't do it alone." Musk knew that to rebuild the world, they would need more than just military force. They would need to unite the fractured nations, form alliances with those who had once been their enemies, and create a system that was transparent, accountable, and fair. But there was a problem. Many governments around the world had been complicit in the rise of the Vanguard. They had been bought and paid for, and now, with the Vanguard out of power, they were scrambling to retain control. It was clear to Musk that the global power structure needed to be dismantled completely. No more corrupt leaders, no more shady deals. He had a vision of a world built on fairness, equality, and opportunity for all, but turning that vision into reality would require a massive, coordinated effort. It wasn't just about taking down the old systems. It was about creating something new from the ashes. Musk spent the next several weeks meeting with world leaders, military commanders, economists, and activists. They discussed the future, a future that would no longer be dominated by powerful elites. Musk knew it wouldn't be easy, but the support he had gathered from ordinary people, those who had stood by him through the revolution, was undeniable. The first step was to rebuild the infrastructure that had been destroyed during the revolution. Cities had fallen into disarray, with power grids, communication systems, and water supplies cut off. The world needed engineers, technicians, and builders to restore order. Musk rallied his resources, reaching out to his vast network of engineers and scientists to start work on revitalizing the world's most critical systems. But it wasn't just physical infrastructure that needed rebuilding. It was the social fabric. Musk had spent years focused on innovation and technology, but now he was learning that the true revolution would have to take place within people's hearts and minds. The old systems of oppression and exploitation had to be replaced with something better, a system that valued humanity over profit, fairness over greed, and community over division. As Musk traveled across the globe, he saw the rise of a new movement, a movement that transcended borders, ideologies, and political systems. People from all walks of life were coming together, united by the idea that a new world was possible. They wanted to live in a society that wasn't dominated by the powerful few, but by the collective will of the people. Musk saw firsthand the power of unity, and it filled him with hope. But there were still many obstacles ahead. The remnants of the Vanguard were regrouping, and they were not going to let go of their power without a fight. The global order would not change without resistance. Musk's team would have to prepare for the next stage of the revolution, a battle not just for resources, but for hearts and minds. The morning after the storm was always the quietest. For Musk, it felt as though the world was holding its breath. The revolution that had started with a spark of defiance had spread like wildfire, sweeping away the old order in its wake. But as the dust began to settle, new questions emerged. What kind of world would rise from the ashes? Could the foundations of the new society stand strong enough to support the ideals it was built on? Musk paced around his office in the newly formed coalition headquarters, staring out the window at the sprawling city below. Rebuilding the world wasn't going to be easy. There were still old regimes clinging to power, remnants of the Vanguard's influence lurking in the shadows. Yet, despite the challenges, a strange sense of hope permeated the air. The first few weeks of the new order had been chaotic. Governments that had once turned a blind eye to the oppression of the many were now scrambling to keep the power they had lost. Wealthy elites who had once controlled the world's resources from the comfort of their palatial estates were now facing the harsh reality of the revolution's ripple effect. But for every door that slammed shut, another opened. The revolutionaries, those who had fought and sacrificed, were now pushing forward with a new vision. New political leaders were emerging, leaders who weren't born from wealth or privilege, but from the streets, from the people. The rise of new leadership was a delicate process. There were no guarantees that it would succeed, but Musk had always believed in the power of people, in their ability to rise above their circumstances and shape the future. Julia, ever by his side, had been instrumental in making sure that the rebuilding process didn't just rely on power and influence, but also on fairness and justice. Together, they had formed a council of diverse leaders, representatives from various nations, movements, and grassroots organizations, ensuring that the future would not be dictated by any single group or individual. But even with all the progress, Musk found himself wondering if they had made the right choices. The weight of leadership often feels heavier when the world is watching. As the face of the revolution, he had been expected to provide answers, to have a vision for what came next. He'd poured his energy into everything, designing new technologies, reshaping the economy, and attempting to balance political ideologies. But sometimes, in the dead of night, he asked himself if any of it was enough. "Do you ever wonder if we've gone too far?" he asked Julia one evening, as they sat across from each other in a dimly lit room. The weight of their choices pressed down on them, a silent tension hanging in the air. Julia looked at him thoughtfully. "You mean if we've overreached? If the changes we've made are too drastic?" Musk nodded. "What if it all falls apart? What if we've unleashed something we can't control?" Julia's gaze softened. "That's the price of change. Sometimes you have to risk it all to make something better. We can't undo what's been done, Elon, but we can shape the future, make sure it's better for everyone. That's what matters." Musk sighed, running a hand through his hair. Julia's words carried weight, but the nagging doubts still lingered. The future was uncertain, and every decision they made would have consequences, some of which they might never foresee. As the weeks passed, new alliances began to form between former adversaries. Countries that had once been at odds with each other, whether over resources, politics, or military power, began to cooperate in ways that were unimaginable just a year before. The world was evolving, and there was a collective determination to make sure the mistakes of the past weren't repeated. One of the most promising developments was the establishment of the Global Peace Alliance, an organization dedicated to fostering cooperation and resolving conflicts without the use of force. Nations once ruled by dictatorships were now participating in dialogues with those they had once viewed as enemies. While not all nations were on board, the movement was gaining traction, and Musk knew it was a step in the right direction. "Are we doing enough?" Musk asked Harper during one of their many strategy meetings. The question weighed heavily on his mind. Was the world truly transforming, or were they simply shifting the deck chairs on the Titanic? Harper, as always, was pragmatic. "We're doing what we can, Elon. The world's never going to change overnight, but we've given them something to believe in. The people want change. They want something real. We can't control everything, but we can guide them toward a better future." As Musk continued to push for a new world order, he also turned his attention to one of the things that had always driven him: innovation. The revolution had disrupted everything, but it had also created an unprecedented opportunity to reshape industries, from energy to transportation, from communication to space exploration. With the old power structures crumbling, there was a new openness to bold ideas. Musk's companies, Tesla, SpaceX, and others, had already made strides in their respective fields, but now, with a more egalitarian society emerging, there was the potential for even greater breakthroughs. "We need to harness the power of collective innovation," Musk said during a global summit with other leading thinkers, entrepreneurs, and scientists. "If we can build a world where the brightest minds can work together without barriers, there's no limit to what we can achieve." There was a sense of excitement in the air. Ideas that once seemed impossible were now within reach. Clean energy solutions, breakthrough technologies in AI, and even the dream of making life multiplanetary were all being discussed as viable goals. The people had tasted freedom, and they wanted more. More than just a political revolution. They wanted an intellectual revolution. They wanted progress, for all. Months passed, and the world began to take shape under the new paradigm. The old systems of oppression were being dismantled piece by piece, replaced with more equitable and inclusive institutions. But as Musk watched the change unfold, he couldn't help but wonder, had they really changed anything, or were they just setting the stage for another cycle of power and corruption? It was a question that would never have a definitive answer, but one that Musk would continue to ask himself as the years passed. He knew that the future wasn't just about what they had built. It was about what they would continue to build, and whether they could stay true to the ideals of the revolution. Standing at the helm of a new world, Musk felt the weight of history upon him. But rather than succumbing to it, he embraced it, knowing that the world they were shaping was his legacy, one that would live on long after he was gone. The revolution hadn't just changed the world. It had changed him. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. What does the future hold? Can a society truly be rebuilt without repeating the mistakes of the past? Share your thoughts below. As the sun set on the horizon, Musk looked out over the city that had once been the heart of the revolution. It was no longer just a symbol of rebellion. It was a symbol of hope, of what could be achieved when people dared to dream of a better world.